Chapter 104. 2. A guest comes to visit. The Mu family's repute had always been very good out there, and they had even opened a pharmacy just for the poor and destitute, giving away medicine for free. The pharmacy had been opened for about 5 to 6 years. Hearing Qin Yu's words, Mu Lai's beautiful eyes shone and sparkled. You will truly become the one who silently spread blessings onto the people. Does this girl even know how much precious and priceless things the assassination temple sent? It is enough to buy up several busy and flourishing streets. And here she is giving it all away so nonchalantly. And back when she had killed that 6th-level spirit beast in its lair, Qin Yu had also gifted her the core crystal with a blink of an eye. It must be known that if a 6th-level spirit beast's core crystal were to be put up for auction, it would at least fetch several good millions. But she had just casually said, "You need it more than I do." Indeed, she had bet with those people in her family clan back then that if she was unable to bring back a 6th-level spirit beast's core crystal, she would give up on her position as the clan's young chief. So, how could she afford to lose? She most definitely cannot lose. Hence, even if she fought to her last breath, she must kill that spirit beast. She had been incredibly proud from birth, and she would never bow down before anyone except towards Qin Yu. Mu Lai then suddenly remembered something rather belatedly, and she then opened her mouth to ask, "That Yan Ning Luo seems to be a member of the Faint Mist sect, and she seems to hold a rather high position in there. You will not be able to come back for the next 2 to 3 years at least when you join the sect. Wouldn't you be seeing her very often in there?" Ever since she came to know Qin Yu's identity, Mu Lai had come to understand quite a good amount of things about her. She knew that Yan Ning Luo had always disliked Qin Yu, and seeing those two people would be seeing each other quite frequently, what would happen if Yan Ning Luo comes to make things difficult for Qin Yu? Qin Yu raised an eyebrow. That probably won't happen. She is an inner circle disciple, and I will surely just be one among so many regular disciples when I get accepted. With such a great disparity in position, we will definitely not see each other even once every few months. She was going in there not because she wanted to learn anything, but as there were just too many secrets in this body she was inhabiting, she wanted to find some clear answers. And as for the reason why she was going to the Faint Mist sect, that was because there seemed to be a voice that was telling her to go there. Mu Lai felt that those words sounded rather logical as well, and she then nodded before she said, "I will be staying here in the imperial capital for a period so we can meet with each other anytime whenever there's a need." "What? You have business to take care of here in the imperial capital?" Although Mu Lai had said that she came here to see her, but Qin Yu could see that something was not right with her demeanor. Even though Mu Lai had hidden it well, but she had still picked up a few clues. What happened? Mu Lai was taken aback a moment before she then shook her head lightly. "There's nothing. It's just that I have never come to the Green Wave Kingdom's imperial capital, and I wanted to come see the scenery here." "You are lying," Qin Yu said as she looked at her with her brows knitted together. As the young chief of such a large family clan, there are so many clan affairs you have to deal with on a daily basis. How can you possibly have the time for something so frivolous like sightseeing? Tell me. What happened? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. In her past life, she didn't even need to talk about how many things big and small she had had to attend to after she took on the position of family head, but just the period when she had been picked as the heir alone already gave her so much pressure that was just impossible to describe. And there were so many branches in the Mu family watching her every move. The slightest misstep from her in her position as the young chief of the family clan would be snatched from her. Moreover, having to stand firm against the dogma of having a female assume the position of young chief, she would have to overcome many obstacles. Everyone might be highly respectful on the surface, no one knew what kind of vicious plot people might be hatching to have her dead. Such filthy, nauseating things that went on inside large family clans were not new to Qin Yu in the slightest. Seeing Mu Lai looking like that, Qin Yu faintly felt an ill premonition rise up within. Chapter 104. 3. a guest comes to visit. Seeing the young lady's worried look on her face, Mu Lai's heart sank slightly deep inside and she picked up the cup of tea on the table to pour it down her throat in one gulp, seemingly seeking to alleviate the emotion she had suppressed inside her heart for the past few days. My father might not have long to live. Her tone of voice was extremely calm, so calm that one could almost not detect any emotion at all. But her words had caused Qin Yu to be greatly startled. How? The Mu family head Mu Qing Tian was merely only about 40 years of age and was an amiable and kind person. He was also a highly respected gold-grade elixir cultivator. How did he come to have something bad happen to him so suddenly? Qin Yu did not want to think that things was really that bad, but when she saw the usually steady and haughty woman show such a helpless look on her face, she could not help but ask in a gentle probing manner, "It was done by your own people?" Mu Lai's gaze grew sharp and her long slender fingers made crackling sounds as they clenched up. Her lips then parted slightly to say, "If my father had not been too soft-hearted back then, he would not have to suffer this unexpected calamity now. He was ambushed when he was advancing in level and suffered violent backlash. Not only his vitality had been severely damaged, his cultivation had fallen from the gold grade 3rd level to the silver grade 8 level in just a few days, a good 5 levels, which turned half his hair white. This was how an elixir cultivator misused the practice. They were able to employ elixir cultivation techniques to make their body constitution become stronger than normal people, causing them to look much younger. But when their vitals are damaged, their cultivation levels would continuously drop, speeding up their aging as their health declined. When their cultivation levels dropped to the very bottom, their lives would then be snuffed out. Hearing her words, Qin Yu felt a wave of emotion. She had not thought that such a big incident would happen in the period that she went to the Hades Canyon for rigorous training. Lai, just let me know if there is anything I can do to help," Qin Yu said seriously as she held Mu Lai's hand. She had probably come such a long way here to the imperial capital because she wanted Qin Yu to offer her some spiritual support and mental comfort. She was after all just a young girl in her teens, and to have something so severe happen to her father, which led to her having to hold up such a large family clan with hungry wolves eyeing covetously at the sides, the immense pressure she must be facing could very well be imagined. The fact that she had not collapsed under that kind of pressure already showed how strong she was. In the past, she would only be able to hide things like this in her heart. But now, she has a friend that she could share her heartfelt thoughts with, and she would not have to hide it till it felt like she could not breathe. "Qin Yu, I want to save my father." Mu Lai suddenly lowered her eyes and said softly. "But when he came to know the method that would be used to save him, he told me he would rather die than to accept my help, and I had a big fight with him about it." Qin Yu's face looked hesitant for a moment. Hearing her words, the method Mu Lai wanted to use to save her father did not sound like a good idea, or the Mu family head would not get so worked up over it. "I searched through the texts in the library. My father's condition is cultivation energy dispersion. One will only need to take a measure of spirit essence from his closest kin and feed it to a little ghost capable of gathering cultivation energy. Wait for 49 days, gather back the energy essence that the little ghost would be losing and let my father absorb it to cure him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Have you gone mad?" Without waiting for her to finish, Qin Yu interrupted her sharply. "Do you know how venomous that method really is and how much it tears at one's cultivation? If you do that, living with an incomplete soul will not only rob you of your affinity with being an elixir cultivator, you could very possibly be reduced into becoming a puppet for an exorcist. But I cannot just watch my father die like this." Mu Lai clenched her fists tightly. "The Mu family cannot do without him. Then it can do without you," Qin Yu retorted with a glare. "I will not allow you to sow something like that." Mu Lai's brows furrowed together. "But. No buts. Since you came to me, I will help you solve it no matter what," Qin Yu said coldly. "Who asked you to have such a nasty temper that made you just one friend here?" Who will help you if I don't? Chapter 105. 1. Paradise City. Mu Lai's eyes grew unnoticeably red-rimmed. Never had she thought that there would be a day that such a proud girl like her would come to trust and depend on someone so much, and neither had she ever thought that she would be so fortunate to have a friend that cared about her as much as she cared for them. That caused a corner of the rock-hard heart of the always cold and aloof girl who had always kept to herself to slowly melt and then soften. There are so many rooms here in the Eternal Peace Duke Manor. I'll have someone get one ready for you to stay here. There is no way I am letting you go stay outside in an inn after you came such a long way here. Qin Yu did not wait for her to reply before she went ahead to make the arrangements. Mu Lai was rather taken aback, but she did not refuse, but just merely curled up her lips in a smile. She had always been the one acting dominantly over others, and she had never thought that she would see the day that someone could be so bossy and tyrannical towards her. Although this kind of tyranny was something she would gladly accept. After saying that, Qin Yu immediately instructed the servants to get the room ready. It was only after she was finished with making the arrangements that she came to realize something. You said that you were thinking to use your spirit essence to keep a little ghost capable of gathering energies. From what I know, only exorcists would keep and rear little spirit ghosts with them. Did you come here to the imperial capital to find an exorcist? Mu Lai nodded her head. I received news that there is a highly mysterious ghost cavern here helmed and controlled by a powerful exorcist, but no one knows where the entrance into the place is. Ghost cavern? Qin Yu was a little surprised. How can such a place exist in such close proximity to the bustling imperial capital? Isn't he afraid that he will be discovered and his nest gets busted? Because the place is so mysterious, it still has not been discovered till today. So I was thinking of getting a person I know from this area to help look into it for me. Mu Lai sighed mournfully. No matter what, I must definitely save my father. Don't worry. I will help you. Qin Yu said reassuringly as she patted Mu Lai on her hand. Her eyes then flashed with a glint, suddenly having thought of a good idea. Hence that very night, Bai Ji Yen, who had just finished battling Lu Junyao over a few games of chess, quickly felt that something wasn't right the moment he returned to his room. There was a small little shadow was crouched above his window. What in the world is that? It was only when he went closer that he saw that it was a cute and adorable little creature whose body was completely snowy white. It had a pair of blue eyes large and round, its tiny ears sharp and pointed, and a short bobbly tail. It looked both like a cat and a fox at the same time, and it was just so unbelievably beautiful and adorable that even Bai Ji Yen was almost swooning from its cuteness. The little fella was just crouched there obediently, looking rather bored as it puffed up its cheeks to blow bubbles. Little cutie, where did you come from? Bai Ji Yen exclaimed softly, his face looking highly benign and harmless as he approached the creature. The little beast blinked its large eyes and stretched a paw up to ruffle its ear. Seductive and evil looks, dressed in full red robes. This should be the right guy. As that thought rose up in its mind, it then stretched out its tiny paws, and brought them up right in front of his face, to reveal a tiny ball of paper right before his eyes. Bai Ji Yen was stunned for a moment, unable to react at all. The little beast looked highly impatient as it then rolled its eyes before it tossed the ball of paper onto the table. Its tiny body then shot like a bolt that arced through the sky in a beam of light, disappearing in an instant. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, so fast. Bai Ji Yen snapped back to his senses and then turned to look at the ball of paper on the table. Who sent that? He had just picked the ball of paper and spread it open, but had not even had the chance to read it when he saw Lu Junyao pushing the door to come in. His eyes gazed lazily out of the window as he then asked, "What was that just went out from your window? How did you know?" Bai Ji Yen asked in bewilderment. In the end, his question immediately earned him a contemptuous rebuke. You did not even feel that clear fluctuation of spirit energy at all. Chapter 105. 2. Paradise City. Ha! Just great. Ever since regaining back his power, he doesn't even need to conceal his sarcasm at all now. Bai Yan was so infuriated he wanted to just ignore him completely. His eyes turned to look at the piece of paper in his hand and an eyebrow lifted up slightly, the expression looking a little mischievous. It's already so late at night and the lass is asking me out for a secret meeting. Hearing that, Lu Junyao subconsciously peeked at the contents on the scrap of paper. There wasn't even a single word on it but just a picture of a feather on it, which was drawn looking highly lifelike. It's that little fox Qin Yu. But how do you know she's asking you out? What kind of a deeper meaning can a mere picture of a feather have? Bai Yan curled up his lips in a smile and said, "This is a long-held secret among us elixir cultivators. Outsiders will not be able to tell what it means." Upon saying that, he scattered a layer of powder from his fingertips. The feather immediately changed shape and a few words manifested. Afterlife Loft. Understanding then dawned upon Lu Junyao when he saw the words. He had thought that there was a secret code or something, but it was just a trick that they employed. That place sounds a little familiar. Bai Yan said as he rubbed his chin with a finger thoughtfully. After rubbing it for a good while, his expression then became slightly startled. Isn't that the territory of that kid? What? Lu Junyao could not be bothered with any other trifling details but was just curious what kind of a scheme Qin Yu had up her sleeve. That kid from the Bellied family. When he came here the last time, I almost killed him. Bai Yan said in reminder. Regarding a certain person's complete indifference towards all and everything, leading him to have no impression of anything, it was something that Bai Yan knew quite well. Hence, this person also had absolutely no idea just how many enemies he had come to make back in Cloud Heaven as well. With Bai Yan's reminder, Lu Junyao finally remembered something about it. What is it? What has the little fox asked you to go that kind of a place for? When you do not know, how could I know anything about it? Isn't her relationship with you better than with me? Bai Yan answered with a shrug of his shoulders. We'll know when we get there. That lass never turns up for no reason and something must be up with the invitation coming in so late. Lu Junyao agreed with a grunt, his face stern and serious. I'll go with you. I'll be able to help if anything happens. Bai Yan was stunned. Can you please turn back to your normal self? Ever since they came to stay here in the Constellation Lands for so long, this great demon lord has been turning more and more kindly and thoughtful for others. He has even learnt to take the initiative to extend help to others. All the others would surely be shocked to death if they knew. Is this fella thinking he's going to help by committing murder and arson? Although it was said that the Constellation Lands was a realm that lowest in position, but it contained perilous places that harbored ferocious beasts that were unimaginably dangerous, and also mysterious and luxurious places known as paradise cities that were in no way inferior to those of higher-level lands, like the Afterlife Loft. Splashed in dazzling and splendorous gold and jade, of the highest luxury everywhere. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The vast gambling hall on the first floor was a boiling pot of people's voices, the loud cheers sounding incessantly in one's ears. It looked like some people were rather lucky tonight, and in contrast there were also those who were especially unlucky, losing so badly they had hawked even their clothes, their faces and necks red as they cursed and swore in rage. On the side was the arena, where a brawny man towering with his 2-meter height was taken down by a thin-looking youth with just 2 quick strokes, a loud dull crash sounding out when the towering figure crashed to the ground. The large figure was indignant and wanted to sneak an attack, thinking to catch his opponent off guard, but was sent flying out with a kick from the youth, that broke his neck and he breathed his last. The youth laughed sneeringly, his eyes disdainful as he then turned around to walk off without looking back, his attendants quickly catching up to follow behind him. The spectating crowd erupted in a bout of jeers. People died in the Afterlife Loft every day. That was no mere rumor. Chapter 105. 3. Paradise City. And before today, people who died at the hands of the brawny guy numbered at least 80 if not 100. And now, it was his turn to die in the arena. The first floor was highly chaotic, the atmosphere in the gambling hall fiery, the arena brutal and cruel, but on the other side, there were many dance hostesses each wearing more revealing clothes than the next strutting around. Every single one of them gyrated their limber bodies decadently to the beat of melodious music, the thin silk covering their bodies fleetingly exposing the beautiful curves of the bodies that was exceptionally seductive and eye-catching. Among them, not only were there highly coquettish women, there were also tall and handsome-looking youths. Even though they were male, the attractiveness of their looks and well-shaped bodies were in no way inferior to the ladies. There were guests there who were more into a different kind of taste, and hence the youths were also highly popular as well. As long as one possessed the right conditions and sufficient wealth to entice them, they could either present a dance or a song for them personally, or one could have them spend a night of bliss and rapture together, with many choices readily available. They were there to satisfy any kinds of requests from their patrons. A balding and obese round-bellied man with a highly greasy and pudgy face then came walking down from one of the gambling tables glowering. He trotted over to go right before a youth with an alluring body and pressed a stack of golden tickets right into the youth's hand. The value for each of those tickets was 1,000, and that was at least several tens of thousands in total. The youth's beautiful face then broke into an enchanting smile. It was not known what the balding man said to the youth which caused the youth's face to look slightly abashed. But after the man added another stack of golden tickets, the youth acted coyly a moment before he obediently leaned himself right into the pudgy man's arms. The balding man immediately could not seem to wait as his heart grew capricious, and before all the countless pairs of eyes in that main hall filled with people, his large mouth smacked right onto the youth's pink lips, his thick pudgy hands starting to rove and grope all over the youth's soft body, eliciting a low embarrassed moan out of the youth, providing a highly explosion scene right in the open. There were many people surrounding them, but those two people did not seem to be bothered in the least, seemingly becoming even more aroused. The balding man even pressed the youth down onto a table, ripping away at the obstructive thin silk, like he was completely unable to hold himself back from doing something people would not be able to take their eyes off from. The youth was very cooperative, and his two long fair-skinned legs spontaneously tangled up around the man's body, looking highly submissive, like the man could do anything he wanted with him. The atmosphere in there immediately became so sensational it was spiraling out of control. On another side of the hall, a cold-faced man in black robes was pulling another man in white robes, and they went inside a private room without a word. "Why are we here in such a place?" The man paused between every word, like he was speaking through tightly clenched teeth. The man in white robes who was pulled inside possessed a countenance of flawless beauty that could make people gasp, his beautiful pair of phoenix-like eyes smiling mischievously. "Lai, are you feeling embarrassed?" These two people are Mu Lai and Qin Yu, who were disguised as men. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Mu Lai had not known for what purpose they had to dress up as men, but she knew now. This place is just too dangerous. Even dressed as men, when they had come in, they had already been scrutinized from head to toe by all kinds of strange gazes, not to mention if they had come in here as women. They would definitely have been skinned alive right on the spot. The people in here were just too terrifying. Just that one scene out in the main hall just now, any normal person would not be able to be so utterly shameless, but those two people had put on such an erotic show out in the open, and it was even a gay show. Absolutely disgusting. Qin Yu looked at the black-faced girl in front of her and almost could not hold in her laughter. What a rare sight. To think that the face of that glacier mountain that would never change could actually show such intense emotion. Alright, don't be mad already. I had not known that this place would get so chaotic. Anyway, we came here for serious business this time and will never come here again in future. Qin Yu said reassuringly, feeling rather amused. Chapter 106. 1. Pulled underground. Mu Lai's face sank, her eyes looking a little complicated. This little lass is younger than her by several years, so how is she seemingly so easy and familiar? In a place that was such a messy hodgepodge of all kinds of crooks and people like she often frequented them. And with that scene earlier, no matter how cold and aloof she could be, she was after all still a young lady and could not help feeling embarrassed by that. But this little lass had stood there watching it all with such great interest. If she had not pulled the young lass away just now, they would surely have seen something that would give them styes. Moulai was wearing a set of full black robes, her long hair bound up high on top of her head. With her original cold and aloof mannerisms, there was nothing out of place seeing her dressed up as a man. Instead, it gave her a sense of suave indifference, which attracted many pairs of eyes among the ladies. One didn't even need to mention Qingyu at all in this case. She had always dressed herself up in male clothes when she went out for convenience, and with her exquisite and flawless facial features, she just needed to conceal a bit of her young femininity, which then gave her a look of devil-may-care elegance, her long upslanted alluring phoenix-like eyes soul captivating. She looked so outstanding that many could not take their eyes off her, attracting the hearts of both male and female. She was clearly such an enchanting and beautiful young lady, but she did not show any single characteristic of femininity in the slightest, dressed up like that, presenting herself to look just like a real man, thoroughly, enchantingly handsome, elegantly sexy, while exuding an unconscious tinge of proud nobility, the cream of the crop among men. Moulai had been caught off guard, and her heart had also wavered a moment before she silently cursed inwardly, calling her a demonic temptress, but went on to say aloud, "I have come to the afterlife loft a few times before. On the surface, it's a guest house and restaurant, but it's highly chaotic and messy inside, where all kinds of people gather. There are no lack of fugitives, killers, all kinds of brutal and fierce felons in here, and hence the world outside gave the afterlife loft another nickname, called Sin City." Saying it's a city was no exaggeration at all. The afterlife loft was so vast that its territories stretched out 1,000 miles around, and not only was it 9 stories high, there were also 3 levels underground that no one knew about. All the villains entrenched in this place all year round, as the moment they step out of the afterlife loft, the only thing that awaited them would only be death. So as time passed, they then become a part of the afterlife loft, assuming the role of a protector. If anyone tried to create a ruckus and stir up trouble, they would not hesitate to kill or kick those people out. There are even those who found a new lease of life, where through their incredible luck at the gambling tables had turned into extremely rich tycoons, or some who won countless battles in the arena that gained them rare and priceless treasures, to become one of the main pillars of the arena fighters. In short, they began to slowly sink into this peaceful world of theirs, one filled with riches and glory, fine wine and beautiful women, always immersed in hazy drunkenness, living their lives as happy as the gods, no longer having to be oppressed and be filled with jitters running for their lives all the time. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The afterlife loft was dangerous and mysterious, and yet exceptionally safe at the same time. Many deals that must not be seen were conducted in here, and they did not have to worry about it being leaked at all. The soundproofing in the private rooms were all very well constructed, and it shut out the raucous clamor outside in an instant, almost feeling like it separated one into an entirely different world. Qingyu slowly poured out a cup of tea, and she was just about to take a sip when her suddenly nostrils flared slightly. The corners of her lips then curled into a smile, and she put the cup down. The afterlife loft was really quite interesting. Moulai saw her actions, and she picked up the teapot to bring it closer before she took a suspicious whiff of its contents. Her face darkened. "There is the scent of Forgetful Creek grass in here." Forgetful Creek grass, as its name implies, is a herb that can cause a person to temporarily lose their memory. It is not harmful when taken in small doses, but if taken over a prolonged period, one will gradually lose his mind, and slowly sink deeper and deeper till he becomes immersed inside his own world. Chapter 106. 2. Pulled underground. What kind of a scheme is the afterlife loft plotting? To think that they would add such things into their tea. Mu Lai immediately wanted to go find the manager of the place to question him but was stopped by Qin Yu, who called out to her. You can save your breath. I do not think that they have been doing this for only a day or two. Having you go expose them would only enrage them from being humiliated. It will only bring disadvantages towards what we came here to do. Mu Lai knitted up her brows, and gave up on the idea after thinking about it. Is the entrance to the ghost cavern really here in the afterlife loft? You must believe in my sensory powers. There is an extremely dark and evil aura in this place, and if my deduction is not wrong. Qin Yu paused for a moment before she tapped the point of her foot on the floor. It is right below here. Mu Lai's body stiffened, thinking that it was unbelievable. The rumored 3 levels underground. Qin Yu shook her head and was seemingly deep in thought for a moment. It seems to be even deeper down. Then how are we going to go down there? Mu Lai's face was looking rather conflicted as she then said, we do not have the ability to delve through the ground, and moreover if it's in a very deep place. It will be very dangerous with just the 2 of us here, and we might even suffocate down there. That is why I called for someone who will be able to help us to come. Qin Yu then opened her mouth to say. Mu Lai was a little surprised. When did you do that? And the thing we are about to do here is highly dangerous. If the other party comes to be implicated by us, will you? Qin Yu laughed softly and said, you do not have to worry. The helper I called in is highly reliable and is highly skilled. On the other side, because Qin Yu's note had not stated any other information but just the name of the place, Bai Ji Yan was not overly concerned but to merely ask the grey-robed man to come along. Who asked him to be good for nothing else but just possess incredible skills. Although the afterlife loft was well known throughout the entire lands, few people knew its exact location. It was because its location was really just too far remote, so it was very hard to find it even with it was such a prosperous place. Bai Ji Yan and his group were delayed for a while, and they only came to find the place after asking people for directions. They could have just used dimensional teleportation which would bring them there in a single breath, but they tarried all over the place for a good hour. Before their eyes, a massive building was revealed before their eyes, layer upon layer of hill slopes surrounding it, which made the entire place look even more impressive. To think that such a prosperous city would exist in such a location, sticking out like a sore thumb out here in the wilderness, which was just so surprising to see. Bai Ji Yan unconsciously shivered with a chill, and he said, what kind of a fetish is that kid Bellied Ji Ran hiding? Why would come to open an inn in a dumb place like this? It's so creepy here at night, isn't he afraid of attracting ghosts? The grey-robed man yawned lazily, looking very sleepy as he said, you're right about that. There's quite a number of wild ghosts around here. A few of them had even just gone in. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, what did you say? Bai Ji Yan's face was one of horror. How many went in? Bai Ji Yan was not able to see strange sights like that, but the grey-robed man was born with the yin-yang eye which allowed him to see things that the naked eye was unable to see. He swiped his palm lightly over his face and the undulating ripple of energy appeared before him like a picture. He raised his eyes to look and saw several malevolent ghosts latched threateningly onto the bodies of people, their posture awkward as they walked, their limbs dragging along stiffly, their faces sinister looking. Occasionally, he would see a lone single person fall behind, and that person would then be dragged into a corner. The person's neck would be broken, and after he had stopped breathing, the ghost would bite into the person and suck up the blood in a frenzy. The person would turn into a dried corpse in mere moments, and the withered body would then be eaten up, where even the bones would be crushed to bits as the ghosts crunched on them hungrily. Chapter 106. 3. Pulled underground. The thing that made it more chilling was the fact that the ghosts would possess the humans, and what was seen were just humans eating humans. It could very well be imagined just how terrified and panicked the people inside were at that moment, thinking that those attacking humans had totally lost their minds. People were running away screaming in all directions, pushing and shoving each other. Quite a number of people fell to the ground from being shoved, and they were trampled upon by countless feet. No one paid attention to what they were stepping on but only knew to escape in a mad dash. No one even thought to pull up those people on the ground where a good number of them were trampled to death, ending up as food for the ghosts. That scene starkly revealed the ugliest side of human nature, showing just how selfish people were. As long as they themselves were able to survive, everyone else who stood in their way could be killed, just so that they would gain a little more time for them to escape. The situation was just too chaotic, and Lu Junyao's gaze darkened. Search for the little fox's current location. Hearing that, the picture before the gray-robed man moved and changed quickly, till it came to show an incredibly horrifying scene. Several thin and withered black-clawed hands had come out from the ground that were grabbing onto a white-clothed figure. Those hands were grasped around the ankles of the young lady dressed in male clothing, seeking to pull her down underground. Beside her was another cold-faced young lady in black clothes, who was grabbing on her hands trying to pull the white-robed young lady back up. But in the very next instant, several more sharp claws hands came out of the ground and grabbed onto her as well, pulling a small section of their calves down. Lu Junyao's face darkened and his body suddenly disappeared right before their eyes. The other two people could see how urgent the situation was, and they immediately rushed forward to catch up. This sudden turn of events had really caught them off guard. Qin Yu found that she could not struggle free from those strange black-clawed hands, as her entire body had suddenly gone stiff the moment she was caught by them, unable to resist in the slightest, as if the strength in her body had been sealed. Lie, I am unable to move. Qin Yu said, her face mournful with a bitter smile. I can't move either. Mu Lai squeezed out those few words out from her mouth. Looks like we can be certain that the ghost cavern is down below. I really admire the fact that you're still calm enough to make that conclusion in the current circumstances. Qin Yu's body slid down a little bit more despite her struggles, and half her body was already dragged into the ground. I admire you quite a lot too. That you're still able to crack jokes at a time like this. Mu Lai retorted, but her eyes dimmed slightly. Her hands were still tightly clasped around Qin Yu's as she continued to say, I'm sorry, I've really dragged you down this time. What nonsense are you even talking about? Who asked you to be my only friend? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The black-clawed hands underground then seemed to grow stronger in that instant, and Mu Lai was dragged down in an instant, disappearing from the surface completely. Qin Yu only had her shoulders and hands still above ground, and just when she was going to fall inside, she suddenly heard the sound of the door opening, quickly followed by the hurried patter of feet. Her hand that was the only thing still up above the floor's surface was tightly grabbed, and the person was pulled down into the complete darkness, down into the chasm. The situation was highly turbulent underground, with broken rocks and crumbling rubble cascading down all around her, falling at an extremely fast speed which would surely cut and disfigure her badly. Qin Yu was feeling her consciousness clouding over, but somehow still remembered to want to protect herself from getting disfigured, her arms subconsciously reaching up to protect her head. But she then found herself suddenly being held pressed right against a wide chest, while a low magnetic voice sounded in her ears. Don't worry. Everything's all right. Who's that? Chapter 107. 1. Inside the ghost cavern, the sudden darkness that enveloped her caused Qin Yu to be unable to see for an instant, but she could feel that she was being held tightly in a person's arms protectively. At that close distance, she could even smell a light, elegant fragrant scent on that person, which made her feel strangely secure. It was not known just how deep underground they were going as she continued to fall. The feeling of not having firm ground under one's feet was rather unnerving. Finally, just as Qin Yu was feeling dizzy with sleepiness, her feet came to step on something soft. Huh? Has she reached the bottom? But why is the ground under her feet soft? Qin Yu slowly lowered her eyes down to look. As her eyes had adjusted to the darkness, she was gradually starting to be able to see. With her head lowered, she came to discover that what she was stepping on was actually a tiny fleshy hand, one that looked like a baby's. Her body stiffened and she quickly jumped back a couple of steps. She lifted her head and her gaze fell over the area she was standing in, to see that the entire floor was filled with baby corpses, and that not a single dead corpse was whole, all of them broken and mutilated. Her face immediately turned white as a sheet. Frightened. A hand suddenly held her by the shoulder, the voice low and deep. Qin Yu was slow to react as she turned around to look. Although she was shrouded in deep darkness, the man's pair of violet eyes were giving off a faint light, dazzlingly absorbing. "Why have you come as well?" Qin Yu was a little surprised. Hadn't she asked Bai Zhiyan to come instead? This man is so highly revered and venerable, how can he be allowed to come risk himself with them? Lu Junyao looked at her expression that was seeming to say, "Why did you come?" and his eyes narrowed slightly in displeasure. "I just saved you and you are treating me with such an attitude. What? Could it be because I am not as reliable as that fella Bai Zhiyan? That maid so sneakily send him that note?" Qin Yu was stunned by the successive questions shot right at her. What is this man getting so worked up about? And, what does he mean by sneakily? She had sent Meatball to go deliver the information and it was done all open and aboveboard. Moreover, how could Bai Zhiyan possibly not go tell him upon receiving the news? Isn't he here now in the end anyway? But although that was what she thought in her heart, Qin Yu was still kind with her words when she said in explanation. "Isn't that all because of your highly venerable status and position? Moreover, you're not an elixir cultivator, so you wouldn't be that much help in here. The main thing, you cannot come to meet with any danger, as what am I going to do if such a revered and sacrosanct body comes to be hurt?" Lu Junyao glanced at her expressionlessly and it was a good while before he asked in a quizzical voice. "So you are being concerned about my body?" Qin Yu was greatly taken aback by those words. Why does that sound so wrong? But she did not think too much about it and just nodded her head offhandedly. "I expended a great deal of effort to heal that body of yours. Of course I am concerned about it." Hearing that, the man's face then warmed up a little before he said, "What made you want to come to a reprehensible place like this anyway?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Yu sighed in long sigh in helplessness. "It's a long story. We do not harbor any ill intentions, but the opponent must have sensed our intentions and came to take the first strike." When she spoke about that, she was suddenly startled a moment. "Did you see my friend? She was dressed in full black clothes. Bai Zhiyan will save her, so you don't have to worry." Lu Junyao replied. His eyes then turned a little disapproving before he continued, "If there is anything you want to do, I can get people to help you. Why would you come put yourself into such danger? You've just recently recovered from your injuries and you already can't stay idle for a bit?" The man's voice was faintly tinged with a rare moment of anger and Qin Yu was a little surprised being admonished in such a manner. This was probably the first time that she was told off by someone in this way. Chapter 107. 2. Inside the ghost cavern. If this was in any other circumstances, she would definitely not lose in a war of words. But those words were truly said out of real concern for her and she found herself unable to say anything towards that for a moment. It was only after a while that she finally found her voice. "I saved you before and you have saved my life as well. Didn't I say it very clearly the last time? We do not owe each other anything, so how could I possibly trouble you again?" Lu Junyao could not help but burst out laughing when he heard that. He arched up an eyebrow and then said teasingly with a barely perceptible smile on his lips. "Bai Zhiyan is one of my men. What difference is there between you troubling me and troubling him? Moreover, I still remember that I saved you another time in Hades Canyon, and with the addition on this time, you owe me 2 big debts now. Doesn't the little fox hate owing people the most? I should make her owe me more and more in accumulation. Who asked her to be so callous and heartless? As expected, when Qin Yu heard those words, her tiny little face immediately creased up and looked highly troubled. For a single herb she had already overpaid by so much and had even gotten herself injured while returning the favor which should have been 100 times over in repayment. But now, it is a matter of him saving her life, and as what people say, the debt owed to one who saved your life is larger than heaven itself. How is she going to pay him back? Seeing her looking so forlorn with despair, Lu Junyao became highly amused the more he looked at her. He then smiled to tell her, "There's no hurry. You can just pay me back slowly, as I will not be running off anyway. But if you come to run away someday instead, I have my ways of finding you." Just like when he had put her on the wanted list for 2 years in the White Fun lands back before without any result, hadn't she finally come walking into one of his territories in the end? All in all, everything came down to fate and destiny. The expression on Qin Yu's face turned even more ugly when she heard that, and she just turned herself around to walk away, where even the baby corpses she had been most afraid of did not affect her anymore. It was probably because she was feeling so infuriated that it made her become a lot braver. Lu Junyao just followed behind her, feeling even more amused. Although the surroundings were pitch dark, it was no obstacle to the two people who could see in the dark. But the further they walked, the evil and sinister feeling they felt grew more intense, until she came to break out in a bout of goosebumps all over. Raising her head to look up, she saw a dense veil of countless white entities floating in the air, roaming aimlessly around. It was a horde of human-shaped spirit figures with disheveled hair floating around, and she came to discover only when she got closer that those hundreds to thousand floating bodies were spirit of people who died by hanging, their faces a greenish-white pallor with their long tongues hanging out while their bodies drifted like there were no bones inside. A few shadowy figures would float past near to them occasionally, seemingly curious about these two who had suddenly appeared in there. The spirits then gathered together to whisper softly to each other, but the two people overheard their conversation. "Why do those two look so different from all of us here? Maybe their cultivation is still too low, I think, which makes them look so different as ghosts. See, they have not even gained the power of levitation in their cultivation. I feel so sad for them. Don't say any more. They are really pitiful." Qin Yu was speechless. As for Lu Junyao, read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, they dare say he's a ghost. Want to gain an understanding of what it means to have your spirit soul struck to scatter and disperse completely? Fortunately, although the ghosts who died from hanging looked rather frightening, they did not seem to harbor any ill intentions but to merely come floating close to satisfy their curiosity, and then flying a far way off from them after that. Qin Yu was racking her mind trying to remember what type of ghosts among the ghost race were able to gather spirit energies. The best kind would be those that were non-aggressive and easy to control, like a newly derived little ghost. She was absorbed in her thoughts when she felt her body being pulled back. Lu Junyao had rushed up from behind and was now standing before her, his tall and towering figure blocking her out completely. That sudden and unexpected action had Qin Yu feeling all puzzled, and she asked, "What's wrong?" Chapter 107. 3. Inside the ghost cavern, Lu Junyao turned his head to glance briefly at her as he said indifferently, "It's not safe." "I know." Qin Yu's gaze was a little conflicted as she looked at the figure of the man before her. Was this fella protecting her? It must be said that this was the first time for Qin Yu, who was always protecting others, to be shielded behind someone like this, and the feeling was rather indescribable. Why was she seemingly so weak when compared to this man? What kind of an strange feeling was that? Compared to the relative uneventfulness here on this side, Mu Lai had instead suffered the attack of a horde of ferocious red-clothed ghosts. They were all badly mutilated and incomplete torsos without their limbs and heads, but were instead highly malevolent, causing one's hair to stand on end. The fiendish ghosts surged forward together as a horde, their sinister and aggrieved words resounding in a whirl around one's ears, pounding incessantly at one's line of defense that protected their sanity. "Give me back my head. Give me back my life. Return my child back to me. The color on Mu Lai's face turned an extremely ugly shade. Hearing the words of these aggrieved ghosts drumming in her ears seemed to make her start to feel she was the culprit who caused them to suffer all the injustice and their woes. She was suddenly feeling terrified, guilt-ridden, agonized by all these negative sentiments striking at her heart that caused her to be almost possessed by one of the ferocious ghosts. Right at that moment, the clear melodious ringing sound of bells rang out, accompanied by what seemed to be the chanting of a Buddhist mantra. The sound came nearer from afar and the horde of ferocious ghosts screeched, scattered in all directions. Some of them were not able to get away in time and they writhed up in a twist before turning into plumes of green smoke, their souls scattering and dispersed into nothing. Mu Lai was covered all over in ice-cold sweat. Two people suddenly appeared right before her eyes and the red-robed one in front, a devilishly enchanting man smiled and extended his hand out to help her up. "You all right?" Mu Lai stood up straight and said rather weakly. "I'm fine. Thanks to the two of you for your help." The gray-robed man behind was holding a string of green-colored bells in his hand and was still shaking it. "TSK TSK TSK, this thing works rather well, doesn't it?" Bai Ji Yen rolled his eyes at him. "Stop fooling around. What's important is that we must find those two first." Mu Lai looked at the two men before her and her mind suddenly remembered something. As understanding washed over her, she then asked, "You're friends of Qin Yu's?" "That's right." Bai Ji Yen nodded with a smile. Mu Lai then felt highly relieved. "Then we've got to find her quick. We were just separated and I do not know where she fell into, or what kind of danger she might be in." Bai Ji Yen acknowledged quickly and he stretched his hand out to tap the shoulder of the man still playing with the bells. "Hurry up and see where they are." The gray-robed man then stopped his actions, and waved his large hand before himself. The air before him rippled and swirled and he started to look for traces of Lu Junyao and Qin Yu. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. The friends that Qin Yu mentioned are actually such highly skilled experts from a higher realm. In the span of a few breaths, two figures appeared in the picture before them. They were still surrounded in darkness themselves here, but it was clear and bright where Lu Junyao was, filled with a brilliant red light. "Where is that place?" Mu Lai asked in surprise. How could such a place appear here so deep underground? Why was the place so red in the image? The gray-robed man's brows knitted up. "That is the territory of the flaming red ghosts." Chapter 108. 1. Crafty Flaming Red Ghost. The flaming red ghosts were a species with stronger attack power among the ghost race, and one must not let them touch your body at all, or one would at the very least suffer a highly stubborn high fever that would not go away with their body turning a bright red, or in a worst-case scenario, their life essence would be eaten away, till they wither and expire. The red-clothed malevolent ghosts were already considered to be one of the higher-level types, but the flaming red ghosts were another notch above them. These ghosts had all suffered extreme agony right before they died, brutally burnt to death. It was said that many years ago, there was a kingdom that had a highly cruel and brutal emperor. Anyone who came to offend him would be thrown into a fiery pit, letting them wail and howl pitifully with the burning flames as he watched to satisfy that twisted sense of pleasure he got from that. The most appalling incident was when he sentenced 1,000 people to death all at once. All those people struggled and cried out in agony, but no one could save them. The longing to be saved in those people's hearts then turned into despair and hopelessness, finally evolving into rage and aggrievement, which in turn became the source of their immense power. They were all fiery red from head to toe with burn wounds all over their bodies. A great number of them looked grotesquely unrecognizable and too hideous to look at, having assumed the form as ghosts exactly like they had looked at the point of their horrendous death. Qin Yu tugged at a corner of the man's clothes with one hand, to stop him from continuing his way forward. "What's wrong?" Lu Junyao turned his head around to ask. "I have a bad feeling," Qin Yu said slowly with her brows knitted up. Lu Junyao had just wanted to tease her a little for being scared when the dark space behind him suddenly turned bright, the entire place filling up with a blood-red light. Qin Yu stared with her eyes wide, stunned by the sight before her. It was an incredibly large and wide hole in the ground that seemed like it would be able to hold 10,000 people. It was filled with roaring great flames inside, and although the great fire blocked their view from seeing clearly what was inside, the agonized cries and screeching screams were impossible to miss. At the edge of the deep gorge, countless blood-drenched hands were reaching out, helpless with despair. "It's burning me. This is too painful. I am dying. Save me. I do not want to die. I really do not want to die." Countless faces burnt beyond recognition could be seen within the fire, looking at them pleadingly, almost seemingly hopeful. Qin Yu subconsciously took a step forward. "Don't go there. All these people are already dead." Lu Junyao pulled her back and said, his voice grim and cold. Qin Yu's fingers clenched up tightly, her face looking a little pained. "But they are in pain." Lu Junyao tightened the grip of his hand a little, causing pain to shoot up Qin Yu's arm. "Wake up. Don't let your mind be clouded by them. The lass might be rather capable, but she's just too soft-hearted and not vicious enough." The moment she felt the slightest bit of pity for these flaming red ghosts, she had immediately fallen into their trap. Because flaming red ghosts carried such an intense amount of agonizing pain and aggrievement in them, a person's heart gets affected by them easily. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Yu quickly snapped back to her senses from the hard grip on her arm. Her face furrowed up in frustration and she cursed out softly. Damn it! She had nearly fallen for it. The enormous pit before her eyes almost completely blocked off the way forward, and they were not able to skirt around the edges as the slightest misstep would cause them to be caught by the stretched-out hands of the flaming red ghosts and pulled right into the fiery pit. They had died in that fiery pit, and after they turned into ghosts, the pit had become a cage that held them trapped, unable to escape from but to continue to suffer the torment under the burning flames. All of them had already lost their flesh bodies and were in fact existing only with their spirit souls, hence, they should not have to fear fire any longer. But as the trauma from the way they had died was really just too great, they were still deeply immersed in that fear, and could not help but continue to cry out for help. Chapter 108. 2. Crafty flaming red ghost. Lu Junyao watched her face that was deep in thought and suddenly said in a soft voice, "It is said that flaming red ghosts are the only species among the ghost race who are able to be reborn." Qin Yu was shocked to hear those words and she raised her eyes up to ask quizzically, "Reborn?" Lu Junyao nodded. Because flaming red ghosts were believed to be kind people when they were alive and did not do anything bad, but as they were made to die such a brutal and painful death, the aggrievement and rage in them just could not disperse, causing them to turn into souls who refused to depart. Hence. His eyes then turned dark as he gazed at the countless hands trying to climb out from the enormous pit but fell back down because of the raging flames and said, "In this mass grave, if 10,000 live humans are sacrificed with all of them dying the same way these ghosts did, the flaming red ghosts would then gain the opportunity to be reborn." Qin Yu's face went slack-jawed. "But isn't that just too cruel? These are the rules they play by in order to survive." Lu Junyao stretched his hand out to point at a particular spot in the pit. It was a youth who looked to be just in his teens. But he was different from all the other heinously mutilated ghosts around him. Besides the fact that his skin was bright red, his face was still in good shape. He was even rather good-looking as his eyes stared fierily at them, his gaze seemingly covetous and filled with longing. "Do you know why that youth looks so different from the others? Why? He has devoured the life essence of 100 live humans at least and is just waiting for the opportune moment to make his move, thinking to lure us over to him." Lu Junyao curled up his lips to say. "Although he is unable to come out too far from the fire pit, he will still be able to move freely within a 100-meter radius away from it. Once we go close enough within his target range, he will definitely make his move. Qin Yu then remembered that she had very nearly walked over to them and her heart quivered at that thought. Qin Yu. Just as she was mulling through the options in her mind, a voice suddenly rose up from behind. She turned around to look and saw Mu Lai in a rather wretched-looking state, with Bai Ji Yan and the grey-robed man she had seen a few times before standing behind her. Lai, are you all right? Did you get hurt? Qin Yu quickly walked over to hold her hand and surveyed her body from head to toe. Mu Lai shook her head lightly. I'm fine. Lucky for me, the two of them appeared just in time to save me. Hearing that, Qin Yu turned to the two men and nodded at them. Thank you very much. It's nothing. The grey-robed man replied in a lazy voice. But Bai Ji Yan put on a devilishly bright smile. There's no need for you to stand on ceremony with me at all. You're almost family already. It's the least we should do. Who is almost family with you? Acting so familiar. With the horde of flaming red ghosts that came to appear before them, they were unable to even go near, and it was impossible for them to force their way through. They were really caught in quite a pickle. Bai Ji Yan arched up an eyebrow and then said, there are just two choices before us. Either we defeat all these flaming red ghosts till their souls scatter and disperse into nothing, or we dig out the exorcist behind all this and eradicate him. Since the enemy has already made his move, then we should just return the favor and root out all his little babies here. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, TSK. Isn't that just too cruel? The grey-robed man said, his face looking rather sympathetic. They already died such a pitiful death and you still want their souls to scatter and disperse. You're worse than a beast. Bai Ji Yan suppressed the strong urge of wanting to kick him inside and he put on a forced smile as he said, if you're so kind, why not go sacrifice yourself up to them? The grey-robed man immediately glared at him and retracted his pretentious demeanor, turning stern and serious. Why not this? I have an idea. Qin Yu, who had been silent for quite a while, suddenly opened her mouth to say, aren't these flaming red ghosts afraid of fire? Chapter 108. 3. Crafty flaming red ghost. She stretched out her hand and a torch appeared in her hand, with a golden red flame burning on its tip. From a distance away, the few other people in the group were able to feel the incredibly intense heat from the flame. It was clear to see that the fire was of a much higher level than the regular fire in the pit. This is. The grey-robed man's eyes lit up, looking with great interest at the unique color of the flames. Qin Yu laughed softly and said, this is elixir fire from my life essence, its temperature many tens of times hotter than regular fire. Every one of us can just hold one torch each and we should be able to carefully skirt the perimeter to get across. Upon saying that, Qin Yu handed the torch over to the grey-robed man, who looked both excited and curious first and then pulled out a few more torches that were exactly the same as the first one. When she finally handed the last one to Lu Junyao, his face looked a little baffled and rather confused. Although he accepted the torch in the end, that conflicted look on his face was just too funny to look at, like that was just such a strange and unfamiliar thing to be doing. That's right. To a man who knew only to eradicate any obstacle that stood in his way, this was probably his first time being so evasive. Dividing up so much of the elixir fire from your body like this, is it really all right? Lu Junyao asked in a low voice. It's fine. The fire has gained its own consciousness and is very intelligent. Moreover, it isn't really that far a distance and it will all come back on its own once we get across. Qin Yu said with a smile as she placed a hooked finger lightly over the fire. The flame immediately curled around her finger playfully, almost acting like a little child. The grey-robed man took the lead with Mu Lai following behind him. Bai Ji Yan walked in the middle and Lu Junyao took up the rear. The grey-robed man went safely across. As the flaming red ghosts were afraid of the intense heat of the elixir fire, they had all gathered over to the other side of the pit, keeping a distance away. They did not come to attack the group, and although they were rueful, there was nothing they could do. As Qin Yu walked, Lu Junyao followed right behind her. Just as she was about to cross, she suddenly heard a young voice call out, filled with sadness and sorrow. "Big sister, please take me away from here." It was that good-looking youth. He was just looking pleadingly at her like she was his savior. Qin Yu's eyes narrowed but did not pay him any attention and was about to walk away to reach the other side already. "Big sister. It's just so painful. Don't leave me here. Don't leave me here alone." The young youth's pitiful voice and his forlorn demeanor looked so much like her foolish little brother at home, who had begged and pleaded with her in very much the same way in the past, seemingly so insecure as he begged for her to not abandon him and leave him alone. Qin Yu's footsteps suddenly paused a moment and her hand clenched up into a fist. She just could not ignore that voice. Lu Junyao saw her stop and he raised up an eyebrow in surprise. "What's wrong?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Yu hesitated. "Can I?" But due to that one instant that her heart softened, she had let down her guard. And it was also at that very moment that the youth in the pit who had his eyes lowered suddenly let out a malevolent laugh and rose up in a leap, his body nimbly shooting straight towards Qin Yu, seeking to take a big bite upon the exposed smooth white skin on her neck. The lifeblood of this human was really just too tempting. It moved his heart more than any other person he had ever seen, which made it impossible for him to control himself from wanting to taste and devour it. That scene had unfolded so fast which caught them off guard. Although Qin Yu had reacted very quickly, but it was not as fast as the flaming red ghost's lust for her blood. Things happened faster than anyone could even say a thing. Lu Junyao's eyes glinted and he lashed out with a palm strike, which caused the flaming red ghost to let out a howl before its spirit soul scattered and dispersed in an instant. Chapter 109. 1. The mysterious old man. The sudden turn of events caused the faces of the people who have safely gone across to change. The color on Qin Yu's face turned ugly as well as it had been because of her single moment of carelessness that gave the ghost that opening, almost bitten by him. She reached her hand out and grabbed Lu Junyao behind her to quickly walk across before she stopped. She then looked down and studied his arm, to see that the skin was still smooth, the joints on his fingers distinct, flawless and beautiful. "Did you touch that little ghost at all?" Qin Yu asked, her face looking worried. "No." Lu Junyao replied. "You really didn't?" Qin Yu continued to ask in disbelief. "Did you get bitten? He was going all out to bite me just now." Upon saying that, she did not wait for a response from the man but just stretched her hands out to feel his arm all over probingly, feeling relieved only when she was sure there were no wounds. Phew, it was rather fortunate. If he had gotten bitten and did not notice it, the consequences would have been dire. He had done that to save her, so he must not get wounded. She had become so accustomed to being candid and straightforward, her personality never one to be bothered by trifling details like a man, and would not act bashful and shy like the dainty young ladies out there. But she was still a female no matter what, so her actions at that moment did not only cause the three other people watching to stare with eyes wide and their jaws slack, even Lu Junyao was taken aback by her sudden action. This little fox has really gotten too used to dressing up as a boy that she is acting exactly like one now. With those tiny hands of hers suddenly feeling his arm all over like that, it was almost killing him. Back when he was in cloud heaven, Lu Junyao's pet peeve was well known throughout. Clothes worn before would not be worn a second time, and he did not allow people to enter his room easily, claiming that they would taint the air inside and affect his mood. He also hated to have any other person touch his body. At first it had just been due to pure dislike, but after he was afflicted with the ice and fire yin-yang curse, no one could even get close to him, unless they had had enough of living and were courting death. In the past 100 years, no one had been able to get within even 3 meters of him, much less come to touch him. But right before their eyes. The lass had just felt him all over, didn't she? Why did he not fly into a rage? Instead, the expression on his face was looking a little helpless. That's just too amazing. Mu Lai had already noticed from earlier that the man with Qin Yu possessed a very powerful presence, an invisible form emanating out from him unconsciously. It could be seen from that just how unfathomably profound that man's cultivation really was. Upon that flawless countenance crafted by the hands of the gods, that pair of rare violet eyes were just so deep and mystifying. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. She averted her eyes after glancing briefly from afar, for no other reason than the fact that those violet eyes were just too devilish. She had almost had her soul hooked without even gazing carefully at them, so it could easily be imagined just how dangerous they really were. But, to think Qin Yu had come to know such a powerful man. Could she have come to know him back when she was accidentally transported into the White Fan continent? It must be said that Mu Lai's guess was really quite accurate this time. They had indeed come to know each other in the White Fan lands, although it had not been all that pleasant an encounter then. After they successfully passed through the flaming red ghost's territory, the grey-robed man continued to take the lead to scout the way forward. They encountered quite a number of wandering spirits and ghosts along the way, but they were of no challenge to him at all, so he dealt with them quickly as they advanced. Chapter 109. 2. The mysterious old man. Using by Ji Yan's words, it was said that although usually a little lazy, he was still rather useful when it really mattered. With that pair of eyes that were able to see ghosts, all those ghosts and ghouls seeking to ambush them from within the darkness were not even given a chance to make their move. The reason for this trip is to help her. Lu Junyao and Qin Yi were still walking at the back, and they were speaking to each other on and off. That's right. Lai Lai's father is a gold-grade elixir cultivator, and he suffered cultivation backlash after being ambushed, greatly damaging his life essence. So now we need to capture a little ghost with the ability to collect and gather life essence to help him recover, or his cultivation will disperse till it's depleted and he will die. Hearing her words, Lu Junyao curled up his lips indiscernibly. You are really so kind to anybody and everybody. That's where you're wrong. Qin Yu turned back to smile at him to say, her long narrow eyes seemingly shining with a sparkling light. I am only like this to people I care about. With people that have nothing to do with me, unless they are of some use to me, otherwise even if they were dying right before me, I will probably not even give them a second look. Regardless whether it was in her past life or present, she could never really be considered to be a good person. There was kindness, but the prerequisite was that there was no threat of harm upon herself. In the past life, someone said she was callous and hard-hearted, clearly cold-blooded and merciless, but hypocritically presented a caring image to the people in the world on the surface, deceiving many with how she looked on the outside. Some people have also said that was what really terrified people most. The young lady's eyes were always smiling, but that was just a veil that prevented people from being able to see through her, like she was always putting on an amiable and approachable smile, but actually had cold cruelty running deep in her bones. Lu Junyao was dazzled for an instant at that moment. Young ladies at that age, regardless whether it was in cloud heaven or in the lower level realms, were mostly adorable and bashful, many innocent and guileless, some arrogant and bossy, ones that were pretentious and entitled more than he could count. But it seemed that only she stood like a lone tree, unique and special. Clearly a young and flawless beauty, she did not look out of place in the slightest when dressed up as a boy, her mannerisms and actions as easygoing and magnanimous as any man, possessing such great skills, but she kept such a low profile that people easily overlooked her. She seemed to possess many faces, and every single one so lively and refreshing. She was not weak, stronger in will than many men. She valued ties and friendship very much, never seeking to take advantage of others, instead fearful of owing people favors that she was unable to repay, always making sure debts are properly and sufficiently cleared. Although it could be said that she was clever, but just by that one point alone made seem rather foolish. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. No matter the time and age, women were always viewed to be weaker, and could only survive under the protective wings of men. But on the young lady here, Lu Junyao had never seen weakness on her. From the moment they had first met, he had known that her future was limitless and impossible to predict. Hence he had remained here in the Constellation Lands and still did not go back, not just to deal with his personal matters, but was intrigued by the talents in this young lady. He knew that she could only be won over only by outsmarting her and not forcibly seized, otherwise, only the opposite effect would be achieved. The expression on Lu Junyao's face deepened and his moist thin lips raised up slightly in a faint arc before he said, "What you're doing is just great. In this world, kind people usually do not go far." Chapter 109. 3. The mysterious old man Qin Yu raised an eyebrow, a little surprised at his answer, and her eyes then sparkled with a mischievous glint. "From your words, the meaning I gathered is that the reason all you people in Cloud Heaven have a lifespan of a few hundred or even several thousand years is because all of you are so vicious-hearted and utterly unscrupulous up there." Lu Junyao was taken aback by those words a moment before he gave a soft helpless laugh. "That line of thinking works as well." Qin Yu immediately twisted her face up in disdain and walked a distance further away from him before saying softly, "How frightening. Looks like I had better keep my distance from now onwards, or I might unknowingly fall into one of your schemes one of these days. This little fox sometimes really just knows how to get on one's nerves." As the two of them bantered, a loud sound suddenly rang out up in front. A rather elderly-sounding voice then reached them from afar, "All of you have come a long way and I regret the tardiness in welcoming you. But as this place is where the ghost race reside, it is not suited for the living to remain in here too long. Cease this ghostly and mystifying farce and show yourself." The gray-robed man snorted with cold derision. He swept his eyes quickly around, and was surprised that he could not find any signs of the person who spoke. Bai Ji Yen looked questioningly at him, and the gray-robed man shook his head with a surprised look on his face. This old man had guarded this place for more than 40 years, and it is my first time seeing such an entity in here. Pardon my lack of manners. That voice rang out, speaking slowly, and an old man wearing old and tattered clothes gradually showed himself. It was a very short dwarf, only about half a grown man's height. If not for his white beard and hair, one would have thought he was a child if one did not look carefully. A faint black mist swirled around him, the black shroud giving off a sinister and frightening feeling. "You are the master exorcist guarding this place?" Bai Ji Yen arched up an eyebrow and asked in surprise. "Why did you capture our people?" Although the dwarf was short and did not look extraordinary, but he possessed a very powerful aura which made him seem to be an exceptional exorcist. Hearing that, the old man's face did not change, but his gaze passed fleetingly over Qin Yu briefly. "Capture? That isn't true. This old man was trying to save these two little dolls. He had actually seen through their disguises with just one glance and knew they were women dressed up as men. His eyes were quite astoundingly perceptive. Every time night fell, a great number of ghostly ghouls would climb out from underground and engage in mindless slaughter. I think that you would have witnessed that when you came here, and if this old man did not take them away from there, I fear they would have met with misfortune." "Then why would you want to save us?" Qin Yu asked with crafty suspicion. There were so many people in the afterlife loft, so why did he only save the two of them? That was a rather suspicious point. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The old man then showed a highly benevolent smile. "Because in that place, those other people are all already dead. It was all dead people in there." Those words said in a light fleeting tone shocked the group of people them. What did he say? That the people in the afterlife loft were all dead. How is that even possible? Chapter 109. 4. The mysterious old man. The old man saw their doubtful looks and continued to say, "Although they still retain their human shells, they have long become people who are doomed and would die soon. That is because the very foundation the afterlife loft is constructed upon was once a mass grave many years ago, with many countless bodies buried deep underneath. By right that should not have affected anything, but as the people in the afterlife loft create just too much chaos, the aura of evil malevolence accumulated over a long period gets absorbed into the corpses, which then causes evil spirits to spawn, fighting to absorb the evil aura of greed and sin that would make them grow in power. Hence all that there is up there now, is only just a bunch of mindless walking zombies immersed in their ultimate paradise. The atmosphere immediately fell heavily silent. No wonder those people had seemed so weird, the expression on their faces looking so abnormal. It was because they had lost their mind. Bai Ji Yen shook his head and said with a sigh, "That brat has quite a good head for business on his shoulders, but his ethics and sense of morals isn't that well managed. He has really harmed quite a great number of people here this time. I must get him to close this place down when I go back to let all the departed souls rest in peace, so that they will not come out to haunt people again. Senior, the reason I came here this time is because I need." Mu Lai had just opened her mouth to clarify her intentions when the old man smiled and stopped her from continuing on before his weathered thin hand slowly pulled out a small thumbnail-sized pill. "This is a condensed essence elixir refined from the spirit essence from the ghost tribe. I think this will be helpful to you." Mu Lai stared, her eyes wide with surprise as she carefully accepted the pill and then said highly gratefully, "Thank you, Senior. No thanks needed. You should not stay here in this place for long, it's better that all of you depart speedily. It seems like you do not want us to remain in here." Lu Junyao said, his mouth suddenly curling up into an amused smile, his violet eyes looking at the short-statured old man with a meaningful gaze. "The living should not tarry too long in this place as they might become tainted by the ghostly aura and fall severely ill, and there is no cure for that." The old man explained. "Are you then saying that you're dead?" Lu Junyao then asked. "Every single exorcist is a dead person, or how would they be able to hold down the countless thousands of evil spirits?" The old man took a long sigh and slowly turned his body away from them. The black mist around his body departed together with him, and from that indistinct figure, it could almost be seen under the coarse hemp garment, that he did not have legs. From the moment he appeared, he had been floating. Qing Yu suddenly asked in a soft voice, "Who are you?" Not knowing the reason why, she just could not help but feel the old man's gaze when he looked at her had been highly loving and very gentle, like he was seeing another person through her. "I am a person who is all filled with sin and lives in the deep depths of darkness." The old and wizened voice sounded out from very far away, rippling out in circles. "But now, I have no more regrets. So many years have passed in a flash, and Qing Er's little Qing has grown up so much already. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." EU Qing Yu's irises widened and her voice raised up. "What did you say? Do you know me?" The old man clearly knew who she was, and knew that her surname was Qing. "Qing Er's little Qing. She is little Qing, then Qing Er. Must surely be her mother." Chapter 110. 1. Protecting oneself for the sake of everybody, but the figure of the old man was already gradually disappearing away. Qing Yu went speedily forward in pursuit, but the ground suddenly shook and collapsed, splitting into two halves that cut off her way forward. Qing Yu barely managed to steady herself at the edge, her face terrifyingly dark and the aura around her body was highly oppressive. She just remained in her half-crouched position at the edge of the split, staring down into the 1,000-foot deep chasm without saying a word. Mu Lai was a little worried. This was the first time that she was seeing Qing Yu looking like that, the exquisite features on her countenance without a single hint of a smile, but only an impending brutal storm approaching from the hills, sending a chill right through her. When a person who is always smiling suddenly turns his face grim and stern, it is really more frightening. "Qing Yu, are you all right?" Mu Lai asked in a soft voice, carefully holding her hand. From behind, Lu Junyao strode over slowly, his long slender arm stretching out to pull the young lady back up and a little further back from the edge. What did that person just say that made you react so strongly? Qin Yu's dark eyes then slowly regained their focus bit by bit. She blinked her eyes and then massaged her temples as she replied, "It's nothing. Maybe I was mistaken with what I heard." Lu Junyao was not letting her muddle through it like that, and he said slowly in response. He clearly knew something, and that was what you have always wanted to know about. That's enough. Qin Yu's gaze turned a little chilly. I will handle my own affairs myself. Actually, she had initially not been that curious about the secrets of this body she occupied, but too many suspicious points had turned up that was bothering her, and hence she could help but need to seek a clearer picture. But, this was after all a personal affair, and it concerned the mystery of her birth, so she did not want too many people to know about it. I can help you. Lu Junyao saw her demeanor suddenly turning stiff and his brows pinched up slightly in displeasure. This little fox changes faces faster than you can flip a book. When smiling gently, she's just a puddle of water. When she turns cold, that water freezes into a sharp blade that can pierce right into your heart. Hearing what he said, Qin Yu lowered her eyes. Thank you, but there's no need. She then turned her head towards Bai Ji Yan and the gray-robed man. I am grateful for what the two of you have done today. I will send 100 superior-grade elixirs over one of these days as a token of my appreciation. Once she finished, she then took her leave with Mu Lai. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Although she did not know why Qin Yu had suddenly turned to become so cold, but Mu Lai was still worried for her. She nodded her thanks to the men and then followed Qin Yu to leave. Does that little lass have to be so calculative with everything? It didn't take us that much effort at all, and she has to be like this. Bai Ji Yan said as he shook his head helplessly, thinking it was going to be really hard for them to coax her into going to Cloud Heaven with them. But, why did her demeanor change all of a sudden? What did that old man say just before he left? Qing Er. Bai Ji Yan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Could it have something to do with the last birth? Isn't she a daughter born from a concubine in the Duke's manor? What kind of a secret could there be behind her birth? The gray-robed man asked, his face baffled. Are you stupid? Bai Ji Yan rolled his eyes mournfully at him. How do you think she compares with any other young lass back in Cloud Heaven? Let's not mention anything else first. Did you even see that elixir fire of hers? It a lot stronger than my own elixir fire. Just how great do you think the feng shui is here in the lower realms that it is able to produce such a maniacal specimen? Chapter 110. 2. Protecting oneself for the sake of everybody. There are only two possibilities. Either she is an old and haggard demoness with heaven-defying cultivation reborn into another body, or she came from an extraordinary family background where her parents were peerless experts and she inherited their talents from them. Hearing that, the gray-robed man nodded his head like it had just dawned upon him. Could it then mean that the last parents might even be people from Cloud Heaven? Bai Ji Yan snorted disdainfully. I suspected that from the first time I saw her, all right. If that's not the case, and it was known that just a little lass from the lower realms was actually higher skilled than him in medicine, then how would he as the young lord of the divine healers sect then still have the cheek to show himself? Yawn. The gray-robed man let out a sleepy yawn. It has been a long night and I'm tired to the bone. Let's go back and get some good sleep. Let's go, Junyao. Bai Ji Yan said to the one beside him, and then suddenly felt that something was not right. Why has that fella suddenly gone quiet the moment the lass left? Is he angry? Bai Ji Yan cast his glance over warily but saw that the man's fine and intricate features on his handsome countenance were tinged a scarlet red, which caused that always cold and distant face to somehow look even more dazzling. Are you all right? Bai Ji Yan went a few steps closer. Just as he was going to check what was wrong with the man, he came to feel a wave of heat exuding out from the man. Bai Ji Yan peach blossom-like eyes immediately flared wide. Why is your body so hot? Lu Junyao's violet eyes narrowed slightly and he stretched out his right hand. On his palm, there was a thin and long wound. It wasn't deep, but blood could be seen. The gray-robed man's eyes widened in shock as well, the dozing bug driven right out of him in an instant. "You're wounded." Heavens! Where did the wound come from? He must not be blamed for being so surprised, as having served that man for several hundred years, nothing has ever lived the moment the man lashed out. Not to mention injuring him, no one had been able to harm a single hair on him at all. So although it was just a thin sliver of blood to be seen, it was shocking enough already. "Shut up." Seeing the gray-robed man kicking up such a big fuss over it, Bai Yen could not help but to whip out a leg to kick the guy. "Are you such a stupid pig? Do you still need to ask? His body is so hot and anyone would be able to tell that he got the wound from that flaming red ghost earlier at one glance." Having suddenly gotten kicked and admonished, the gray-robed man then asked in a weak voice, looking all aggrieved. "Wasn't the Lord completely fine all this time? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. And that lass had even checked him earlier. Are you brainless? If that lass finds out, she'll feel that she owes us something and become even more distant from us. How could Junyao possibly let her know?" Bai Yen continued to berate him. The gray-robed man almost felt like there was no point living anymore. Why must he be branded as stupid and brainless? Just what did he do wrong? Bai Yen turned his head around after admonishing him, and his good-looking face creased up with concern. "How could you allow yourself to be hurt? Don't you know that your body is special and you cannot get wounded? What will you do if you get infected? How worrying." Bai Yen and Lu Junyao grew up together from a very young age, and they had been together for the longest time. Although he always suffered the stinging lash of Lu Junyao's venomous tongue, he was always the one who was most concerned for Lu Junyao. Because no one else knew Lu Junyao better than he did, and knew that this man had suffered more than enough pain already. Chapter 110. 3. Protecting oneself for the sake of everybody. Lu Junyao looked at Bai Yen staring so mournfully at the wound on his palm, and he laughed softly to say, "It's just such a small wound. Do you need to make such a face? What? The divine healer's sex young lord's medical skills seems to be slackening. TSK. Who is in the mood to joke with you?" Bai Yen could not cheer himself up at all. This small wound might be enough to cause you a whole barrel of agony. Scratched by the flaming red ghost and you still think it's nothing. You would have gotten off lightly if your fever just for an entire day and night. Bai Yen was furious as he spoke, and he suddenly stopped abruptly. His beautiful eyes, peach blossom-like eyes, narrowed, and he then said in a soft voice, "Junyao, I'm serious. Do not do this again next time." "What?" Lu Junyao arched up an eyebrow in surprise, not knowing what he meant by those words. "At that time, you could have dodged completely and kept yourself safe, couldn't you? But to ensure that the lass does not come to any harm, your actions came to be delayed and you opened yourself up to the risk of being bitten by the flaming red ghost, right?" Bai Yan's enchantingly handsome countenance did not show his usual playful and frivolous expression, but was stern and serious. "That lass is indeed rather highly skilled and holds quite more than a few mysterious trump cards hidden in her hands. I agree that it will be great for us if she's on our side when she matures and grows in power in future, but you do not have to do so much for her, to the extent that you risk your venerable self to do it. You are the king of the dark regions, and it is only when you're safe and well that the dark regions can grow in might, where the disciples of the Dark Legion are firm in their faith and resolve, that would make the Dark Legion the most powerful might in Cloud Heaven one day. So, for the sake of everyone in the dark regions, you have to protect yourself." It can be said that Lu Junyao had really been so completely indulged by everyone in the dark regions that he paid absolutely no regard to law and order and was willfully impudent. No matter what he said or did, all those people recklessly followed behind him, acknowledging him without question. Even when the man had erratic mood swings and vented his frustrations on his subordinates when he was in a bad mood, not a single one among them uttered a single word of complaint, to the extent where as long as it made him happy, it did not matter even if they were flogged 100 times. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He could be said to be a man who truly possessed a mystical kind of attraction, that made people willingly lay down their lives for him from deep down inside their hearts, as when he was truly happy from the bottom of his heart, just the slightest rise in the arc of his lips was enough for all of them to give up everything they had. Even when Bai Ji Yan had just been very young, he had been enthralled by just one statement from the young Lu Junyao. "When you're around, I do not feel like I'm alone." And it was just that one single statement that made Bai Ji Yan choose to single-mindedly remain by his side. Lu Junyao was just too lonely, so lonely that he did not know how to sad or sorrowful, and did not know how to cry. That pair of violet eyes were always smiling, seemingly sparkling with stars inside. He smiled when he was angry, he smiled when he was sad, and he smiled when he was filled with sorrow. Even when he went personally to exterminate the entire clan of the enemy who murdered his parents, and he killed the enemy's wailing little baby who was just a few months old with his own 2 hands, he had still been smiling. He held the baby's fragile neck, where from a loud clear wailing till the tiny face gradually turned greenish-purple before the baby finally stopped breathing, Lu Junyao had seemingly been talking to himself, his words so saddening and devoid of hope. Chapter 110. For protecting oneself for the sake of everybody, he said, "Why are you able to cry so freely but I can't?" He said, "Why are you able to wail in sorrow when you see your parents die a violent death but I can't?" He said, "Why do I have to live an existence like I'm the devil smiling that gazes upon all that happens in the world, unable to laugh without restraint, unable to cry with unbridled sorrow?" He said, "Why do I have to be such a heartless, cold-blooded and tearless person, destined from the moment I was born to be a lone orphan star, where no one could come close to?" Countless questions came out from his mouth, but among all the scattered corpses that filled the floor, none could give him an answer. Finally, he suddenly lowered his head and laughed softly to himself, saying like he had completely lost his mind. "If that is what fate has destined it to be, then I can only defy what blind heaven has ordained." Ever since then, the king of the dark regions became an entity that no one did not know about, his personality haughty where people who did his bidding would thrive and anyone who defied him would not live. Everyone had kept their distance away from him back then, their faces changing the moment they heard his name. That was the reigning demon lord in cloud heaven who possessed highly powerful cultivation, his exact whereabouts mysterious and unfathomable. He also had a bunch of fiercely loyal and incredibly powerful henchmen doing his bidding, a truly awe-inspiring existence. He terrorized cloud heaven with impudence for close to 500 years, and it might have been because some people were no longer able to put up with him any longer that drove them to join hands against the demonic lord. It was also because he had been too arrogant at that time which led him to fall for their ploy. And from then onwards, Lu Junyao began to withdraw into himself in restraint, no longer as spirited and willful, turning to become exceptionally steady. His heart also grew a lot stronger in the process, where no one, nor was there anything that could move his heart anymore, which made Bai Ji Yan who had always been beside him a lot less worried. But right before him now, he had discovered that things had taken a bad turn. A variable had suddenly appeared, and it was a variable that was able to affect his emotional state. To the extent that this very variable had made him breach his own principle, to do so many things that his current self should not be doing. Lu Junyao looked at Bai Ji Yan's worried expression and he opened his mouth to say, feeling rather amused, "I know that you are concerned about me and I am touched. But you should not think too much into it as this is merely an accident and it's just a tiny scratch. It's nothing. Junyao, do not try to do anything for that lass anymore. Although she saved your life, but you have saved her as well. It is just as she said before, you're even." Lu Junyao was a little surprised. "Didn't you have quite a good impression of her?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. That is an entirely separate matter. Bai Ji Yen said stern-faced. If my admiration of her will cause you to risk getting hurt, then I will willingly abandon that kind of an admiration. Lu Junyao's gaze darkened, and he did not say anything more. And the inconspicuous gray-robed man who had remained at the side to listen for so long then suddenly spoke up. I'll say something, but the two of you must not be angry. The two men turned to look at him, like they were curious what kind of infuriating thing could he possibly bring up. I had always felt. Bai Ji Yen, have you actually adored the Lord for many years? The gray-robed man had contemplated on it for quite a long while, before he came to give voice to that audacious statement that could very well get him silenced. Chapter 111. 1. Snowball and a little lump of coal. Bai Ji Yen was dumbfounded. He wasn't angry. Really. But just only wanted to pluck that fella's head off his shoulders, and see just what kind of ridiculous nonsense filled up the inside of that fella's head. Because everything had happened all in one night, so Qing Bei had not been aware that Qing Yu had gone out at all, thinking that she had been in the tranquil abode all that time. Mu Lai had bid her farewells and left as she needed to bring the spirit essence elixir back to treat her father's injuries. Moreover, someone had been too audacious with their actions this time and she needed to go back to do a little housekeeping, to deal with those sly and scheming traitors. Otherwise, the Mu family clan that had stood strong over the generations would be brought down by these scoundrels one day. Before she left, she and Qin Yu came to an agreement to go to the Faint Mist sect together when the time came. Till the time of the Faint Mist sect's recruitment of new disciples, was still 4 months away, and in this period, nothing much happened. And on another side, situated deep within layer upon layer of mountains and valleys, sat a majestic structure in a most mysterious place. That was the almost legendary assassination temple within Carefree Valley. Within a quietly elegant bamboo loft, a man was dressed in his snow-white inner robe as he stood handsomely by the window. His waist-length dark hair was draped carelessly over his back, lifting and falling gently under the slight breeze. A few kingfishers were perched on the window ledge, pecking at the bird food scattered there, highly tame and seemingly not afraid of humans. Looking from the side, the man's exquisite facial features seemed to be gilded with a layer of radiance, his long sharp brows slender, eyes elegant with long curled lashes that cast tiny shadows over his half-closed eyes. Just below that, was his high arched and pointed nose, a set of light pinkish lips with chiseled jaws that with a handsome cleft in the middle of his chin. Just by looking at the side of that face, it was already enough for many conceited pretty young ladies to feel inferior and drab. "Jean, you're awake so early?" A man's warm and robust voice rang out. The person who just came in was of a towering stature, large eyes and thick luscious brows, and handsome looking. It was Feng Qi. "Looks like you've almost fully recovered. You really scared us back then. Although your very vitality was severely injured at that time, but it seems your cultivation has increased tremendously after recovery. Truly a blessing from the heavens upon the fortunate." Feng Qi said jokingly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Hearing that the man moved and turned his body around. With his entire face revealed before people, one just cannot help but stare. For no other reason than this. Just below the corner of his left eye, was a highly lifelike looking black bloom, tinier than a fingernail, but was just so eye-catching, its unique shape clearly visible. The man's countenance was already so outstanding that it was like that of a fallen immortal, and the black bloom when his eyes were fully opened, just made the man look indescribably devilish looking. To think that a person was able to combine the unsullied aura of a deity together with a devilish air so perfectly, not contradicting each other at all. Chapter 111. 2. Snowball and a little lump of coal. If one were to see this almost deity-like young master for the first time, nobody would be able to link him to the ruthless assassin who killed people without even blinking. But the man was a killer through and through, and one who was known as the one and only divine-level assassin of legend throughout the lands. Shi Zhanchen's looks were just too alluring, so beautiful looking he made people's hearts crumble. It was even rumored that in order to catch a glimpse of him or to be able to speak to him, there were people who paid a handsome fortune to have him come kill them, with absolutely no regrets even if they paid for it with their very own lives. Hence, there were very few people who truly saw his face. Besides people from the assassination temple itself, there were only dead ones. Even among the people from the Carefree Valley, very few have seen him before. It was because this man was just too special. Except for the nights when he went out on his missions, he would otherwise not take a single step out from that bamboo house. Shi Zhanchen walked away from the window and picked up the outer robe beside him to put it on. "You need something?" Feng Qi rubbed his nose and said, "The valley chief sent word over a few days ago that if you are feeling better, he wants you to go take a look at their recent progress in training. It will be the time we will recruit new disciples in a few months' time and they must not be allowed to slacken in their cultivation training. And in just a few days after that, it will be time for the disciple exchange program between the Carefree Valley and the Faint Mist sect. The valley chief wants you to bring a few good saplings over and also to spy on the Faint Mist sect a little." Shi Zhanchen listened quietly till he finished, and then emotionlessly threw out two heartless words. "Not going." He just knew it would end up like this. "Can you give me a reason? So that I can at least answer to the valley chief." Feng Qi said helplessly. "Troublesome. Don't feel like going." Shi Zhanchen said. To him, all these affairs were completely meaningless. If he were to expend all that effort, he would rather accept a few more big missions which would pay several tens of millions. Feng Qi sighed helplessly. "All right. Then I'll have to go play the bad guy." After he said that, he then remembered something and said, "Oh right. Something seemed to have happened in the Mu family but Mu Lai did not make any request for assistance and hence we did not interfere. But this debt owed must definitely be repaid or it would remain a cause for concern to us in future." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He had been in a coma from his injuries and was not aware of anything that had happened. Fortunately Yi Xian had constantly come stick to him to nag at him, telling him about all the dangerous things that had occurred. Yi Xian had told Shi Zhanchen that he had very nearly been turned into a puddle of blood and that the man almost would not have been able to see him again among other things. But one thing Shi Zhanchen remembered from Yi Xian's ramblings was that the person who saved him in the end was not the eldest miss of the Mu family, but a beautiful young lady in a white dress that they had never seen before. It had seemed like she was Mu Lai's friend and it had looked like they were rather close. But as they did not know her identity and neither had she left them her name, they did not have any more news about the girl after that, so they had delivered the repayment to the Mu family. It was said that the young lady was highly mysterious and she had immediately broken the snake voodoo curse the moment she appeared. He was told the way she had dispelled the curse was even more astounding, completely brutal but executed in the most direct and effective manner. Chapter 111. 3. Snowball and a little lump of coal. Shi Zhanchen suddenly recalled what he had been told and he asked in a casual tone, "About that young lady in white, is there any news about her?" Feng Qi was a little startled as it was the first time that Shi Zhanchen was actually asking about someone he did not know at all, but Feng Qi went on to answer truthfully, "Nothing concrete, but it is said that she was someone Mu Qi went to invite in from the Green Wave Kingdom, so she should be the young miss of some family clan or noble family. That kind of presence and the way she carried herself was not like that of an ordinary person." Shi Zhanchen acknowledged curtly and did not ask any further, turning to walk out of the bamboo house. "Where are you going?" Feng Qi inquired curiously. "Just going to the valley chiefs to have a look." Shi Zhanchen answered without even turning his head. Feng Qi could not help but laugh in speechlessness. This fella just has a sharp tongue but just a softy at heart after all. Ever since Qin Yu brought back that unbearably adorable little beast, Little Snow had become exceptionally obedient. That fella who always disappeared for 10 days to a fortnight at a stretch had suddenly just decided to stick to Qin Yu's side, following her wherever she went, like a sticker plaster. How could Qin Yu not know what little Snow was thinking? That fellow was just afraid that its position was at risk and that it would soon be neglected. As it had to share half the elixirs with another beast from then onwards, the sense of crisis could not be any stronger. Meanwhile, Meatball had been extremely obedient and usually did not go running around on its own. When Qin Yu was occupied with cultivating elixirs, the tiny beast would just sit quietly on the table, its face cradled in its two tiny paws, its two beautiful blue eyes studying her actions intently, looking so adorable it could melt people's hearts. Unlike little Snow, who would occasionally still be up to mischief, sneakily eating up a few elixirs. Meatball, come over here so I can stroke you a bit. Qin Bei opened his mouth to say invitingly. Qin Yu had not hidden the truth from him, telling him that Meatball was a little creature she had found the night she went out to search for food in Hades Canyon, and that it could talk. Qin Bei had been shocked for a good while, but he would naturally help keep that fact a secret. Hence, in the eyes of outsiders, the little creature was just a highly adorable pet of some unknown species. Even as a young man, Qin Bei could not resist the little fella's charms. He just could not help it. The little creature was just too cute and lovable. Even if it was just sitting there and not moving an inch, people just could not take their eyes off it. The little beast was just too beautiful looking. The little fella who was single-mindedly focused on watching its mother cultivate elixirs suddenly heard someone call out its name. Its tiny ears flicked slightly and it turned its head around. It then wrinkled up its small little nose in displeasure and refused mercilessly. Don't want. Qin Yu looked highly hurt. Why? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, because I belong to Mother. Only Mother can touch me. Meatball said with a serious look on its face. Also, boys and girls should keep their distance from intimate contact. I am a pure and chaste girl, so if you touch me, then I would lose my chastity. Qin Bei's face was looking utterly flabbergasted. Pure and chaste girl. Did I hear that right? Spirit beasts have evolved to such an advanced stage. Not only can this one talk, but is even preaching about morals. Although Qin Yu was in the midst of cultivating elixirs, she did not seal 5 basic senses, and so, she was able to hear their conversation. But the moment she heard what Meatball said, her meditative trance almost cracked, which would have ruined the entire cauldron of elixirs. Chapter 111. For Snowball and a little lump of coal, that little fella is just priceless. Waiting till Qin Yu finished cultivating the elixirs and kept them away, Meatball immediately leapt off the table and came pattering over on its tiny paws, its tiny face looking exceptionally pitiful while that pair of clear eyes just looked straight at her. Qin Yu smiled and bent down to pick up the little lump of coal into her arms, and rubbed its soft and fluffy little head. That's right. A lump of coal. It was only after Qin Yu brought it back that she came to discover that the little fella took on 2 different colors between night and day. At night, it was a pure white ball of snow, and it would turn into a lump of coal once daylight came. It was not known what kind of species it was that allowed it to change in color, but both shades were equally just as adorable. The lump of coal snuggled in Qin Yu's arms, and after it found a comfortable position it did not move anymore, seeming to enjoy the feeling of being embraced by her. Qin Bei looked on with envy, not knowing why the little fella just did not want to be carried by him. He knew he had been very nice to it and had even often fed it things to eat. Looking at the youth's mournful expression, Qin Yu could not help but laugh out loud and say to him, "It might be because it just hasn't gotten used to you yet and seeks only for familiar faces. It will probably be better after more time passes." "Then why does it call you mother?" Qin Bei then asked in incomprehension. "I remember reading in a book that when beasts are born, they recognize the first person they see as their closest kin. Could you have been the first person this little one saw?" Qin Yu arched up an eyebrow and stroked the ears of the little lump of coal. "Although it is small in size, it does not seem like it was just born. And I don't remember having ever seen it before in the past, or I would surely remember something so adorable, wouldn't I?" Unexpectedly, Her voice had just fallen when she suddenly felt the body of the tiny creature stiffen up, and it then seemed to be sobbing spasmodically, whimpering in a soft voice. Mother told a lie. You've clearly forgotten all about Meatball. That pitiful and aggrieved voice caused Qin Yu's heart to soften, and she said in a gentle and comforting voice, all right, take it that I have forgotten. You're really just like a human child that loves to cry so much. But Meatball is a little child. The little beast lifted his tearful eyes to peer up at her, serious yet bashful. I'm Mother's little child. Qin Yu was speechless. The little fella is doing it again. Acting all cute and adorable too, but her heart. That was pure cheating. Pfft. Qin Bei burst out in amused laughter and went on to tease the little beast. Why don't you tell me just how capable my sister is to be able to give birth to a little fella like you? And what about your father? Where did your father go? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qin Yu was utterly speechless. Her brother is arguing with a spirit beast. Really? Hearing that, Meatball pouted indignantly. Meatball does not have a father. Oh. Such a poor little thing. So adorable, and you don't have a father? Qin Bei exclaimed in mock surprise. Meatball is born from mother, what does it have anything to do with father? Sensing that Qin Bei was making fun of him, Meatball growled angrily. Qin Bei was stumped. How did you come to be born without a father, you foolish little child? Chapter 112. 1. He does not belong here. It was a daily norm between this pair of man and beast, which drove people to laugh till they teared. After Qin Yu finished cultivating the elixirs, before her spirit energies had completely dispersed, her consciousness delved right into the dimensional space. Mistress? Sensing the presence of her aura, Zhongmai materialized before her, his gold and silver eyes looking at her in surprise. Qin Yu acknowledged with a nod and then asked, why aren't you sleeping? It was not strange for her to be asking that, as when this fella's spirit soul had been incomplete, he was always sleeping most of the time due to weakness. Hearing that, Zhongmai was a little embarrassed, and he scratched his head while he answered, I am working very hard on raising my cultivation level every single day now, seeking to catch up to Mistress' footsteps. His spirit had been damaged for so many long years after all, so there were many things that he had to start afresh. I see that you have gotten better at apple polishing. Qin Yu said as she smiled at him. She then turned her attention away from him and raised her slender hand to wave through the air. An enormous book that was about half a man's height then appeared before her, which let out a dull thud when it fell to the floor. Upon that old and ancient cover, were imprinted with several complicated-looking ancient characters, heavenly insights of medicine. Throughout her past and present lives, the number of time Qin Yu had flipped through this book could be counted from the number of fingers on her hands. On one hand, it was due to her photographic memory, where she was able to remember things just by seeing them once and to decipher and understand the essence from it. On the other hand, it was because there were medical and poison techniques depicted in there that were beyond her abilities, and before she attains a certain level in her cultivation, it was impossible for her to access the content further back in the book. But over the recent period, it was probably due to a change in her state of mind that allowed her to further break through to a small extent, that came to unlock another 3 to 4 pages of the heavenly insights of medicine for her. If this was in her past life, such a tiny breakthrough achieved would not even be worth a mention, but to Qin Yu in her current weak state, it was already a great improvement. It must be known that after having descended into this strange world for so many years, she had only managed to unlock about 10 pages in the heavenly insights of medicine. Such a thick tome that held more than 1,000 pages, and she was only able to access this half of its contents. Zhongmai was watching her, and he then said delightedly, Mistress, your cultivation has advanced quite a bit again. There wasn't a ripple of emotion on Qin Yu's face as she said indifferently, it's still too slow. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Zhongmai said comfortingly in a soft voice, this body cannot be compared to Mistress' body in the past life with too great a disparity in so many areas. For you to have gained such a great improvement, the results are considered to be rather good. Qin Yu let out a sigh. So many years have passed. Her body from her past life would have long become fertilizer to the plants and flowers. And with this current body, though not entirely all that gifted, but it could be considered to be one of the better ones, with very outstanding looks at least, so there wasn't much that she wasn't all that displeased about. Chapter 112. 2. He does not belong here. Seeing Qin Yu with her eyes lowered as she perused those few new pages, Zhang Mai asked curiously, what could have made Mistress suddenly think of checking through the heavenly insights of medicine? Qin Yu's face was a little thoughtful as she said, over the past few days, strange images kept appearing in my mind which made me feel rather disturbed, so I thought that I should come have a look to see if I can find any elixir recipe with great mind-calming effects to soothe my mind. Strange images. Qin Yu nodded, the aura around her body feeling depressed and decrepit, a feeling she had never felt before. Every time I feel like I am about to have an idea what they are, the images would suddenly just disappear abruptly. And the moment I close my eyes, I would unconsciously fall straight into my dreams, but I would not be able to remember a thing when I wake up. For a person who was able to go without sleep for days and nights on end, she was feeling that she had become quite haggard being tormented like this. Zhang Mai was rather taken aback for a moment before he asked warily, did Mistress happen to see the scene from Azura's hell that appeared before? Qin Yu was startled by that question, and although she wasn't able to recall too clearly, that scene had left such a deep impression on her it was hard to forget it. It feels like I did. Mistress, do you still remember what I said about the source of that scene from Azura's hell? Just before a peerless expert dies, a dimension that forms from his powerful consciousness. That's right. Normally when such a situation occurs, there is only one possibility. What? The owner of that dimension is calling out to you. Qin Yu was a little shocked and she asked, isn't that a dimension that forms only after the expert dies? Zhang Mai's face was serious as he replied, but this is the only explanation that makes sense. Otherwise why are you seeing that scene so frequently? Qin Yu was silent for a moment before she said in a slightly hoarse voice. I feel that, it might have something to do with my identity and birth. The woman whom she could not see clearly might very possibly be her mother. This was not some wild and hazardous guess she made but an instinctive reaction from deep inside her. The moment she saw that woman, she had immediately felt a subtle feeling inside guiding her to approach closer. That was the guiding hand from one's instincts towards their closest kin. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. That place. A familiar wave of stinging pain washed over Qin Yu's mind suddenly, that caused her face to turn pale in an instant. It is happening again. Every time she tries hard to think about that, her mind would always hurt intolerably for no reason, like it was trying to stop her from remembering her past. The beautiful alluring phoenix-like eyes immediately turned dark, filling up with chilling ice. Stopping her from remembering. It will not be long before she will definitely uncover the person behind this. Chapter 112. 3. He does not belong here. Water Edge Kingdom. It had been more than 2 months since the Duke of Vast Seas had returned, and the most unfathomable thing that happened within this period of time was just one thing. Although he possessed unparalleled intelligence, he was born sickly and frail. The Emperor, predicted to be unable to live past 30 years of age, had seemingly undergone an earth-moving change. Because of his frail health, Yumu Chen could not expose himself to strong winds in case he catches a cold, and was unable to undertake long and arduous journeys, or a single unforeseen change in the turn of events might rob him of his very life. But in the past 2 months, his vigor and vitality seemed to be improving by the day, and the man who was not even able to hold morning court for too long was now able to last for an entire hour was like a miracle to them. What astounded the whole bunch of officials was that they had even seen His Majesty practicing with a sword one bright and early morning. Yumu Chen's level of cultivation was not that low, but because of how weak his body was, he was unable to carry out any strenuous activity at all, not to mention practicing martial arts. For them to see His Majesty picking up a sword once again, it caused hot tears to brim up in the eyes of the officials. With the heavens' blessing, His Majesty's health was finally taking a turn for the better, and they would not have to worry about his well-being all the time anymore. And for that change, everyone credited it all onto the mysterious and powerful Duke of Vast Seas. Regardless whether it was 10 years ago or now, every time he appeared, a miracle seemed to happen, turning things completely around to finally bring a fortuitous conclusion to matters at hand. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. This man was seen as the Water Edge Kingdom's star of fortune, and as long as this man was around, the Water Edge Kingdom would never decline. Yumu Chen was dressed in simple and normal clothes, the flexible sword he wielded in his hands smooth as a dragon swimming in water, moving efficiently and with precision. His eyes were clear and sharp, the attendants standing at the sides who were initially filled with trepidation now looking very much at ease, watching the man's actions without worry. The man's gentle and elegant countenance did not show the slightest bit of exhaustion, and his cheeks were tinged with rosiness, seemingly filled with vigor. At the very last instant, Yumu Chen suddenly paused in his actions a moment and turned his flexible sword towards a particular direction, driving it straight into the tree standing 10 meters away. The loud sound of wood splitting then rang out and the tree broke into 2 parts down the middle. Behind the tree, stood a pretty and slender-figured young girl with a large pair of vividly enchanting blue eyes who stood there in a stunned daze. It was a good while before she recovered her senses and she planted her hands on her tiny waist to admonish in an indignant voice, "My imperial brother. Are you trying to murder your own sister here? Aren't you afraid that the sword might hurt me?" Yumu Chen sighed helplessly and said, "Who asked you to hide yourself there without even making a single sound? Your imperial brother thought that it was some petty thief that sneaked in. Moreover, your imperial brother has just only one precious little sister that I couldn't dote on enough. How could I possibly bear to hurt you at all?" Chapter 112. For, he does not belong here. Those words had not only explained the reason for his actions but also soothed the ruffled fur of his younger sister, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Yumu Chen had always been an extremely smart person. Hearing those words, no matter how unhappy Yuxin Yen was, the anger just seeped out from her as she came running over delightedly to hold Yumu Chen's arm, her face joyous as she looked at him to say, "My royal brother, I'm really so happy for you. If you come to grow tired of holding court one of these days and want to sneak off for some relaxation, I can bring you out to play. There are many fun places out there and you can just get Big Brother Yili to shoulder the load for a few days, and help to handle court for you. He doesn't like to go outside anyway." Upon saying that, Yuxin Yen stiffened her lips to stifle a smile, seeming to think the plan she just came up with was really smart. Yumu Chen was instead taken aback. Let Qin Yili hold court and handle the state's affairs. He would have really liked to do as what Yen said. If this little lass who liked Qin Yili so much were to know that he was going to leave, she would probably be so sad and burst out in tears. Though she seemed to be such a carefree lass with a wild character, the people she cared about were Qin Yili and Yumu Chen, the 2 people who watched her grow up from young, her closest kin whom she had lived with for more than 10 years. So how was he going to break the news to Yen that Qin Yili would be leaving the Water Edge in a few months' time? In fact, not to mention only Yuxin Yen would not be able to accept it when the time came, as even when he had heard that news himself, it had been a good while before he came back to his senses. That man was determined to leave. Logically, he had unwittingly came to save Qin Yili's life back then, and Qin Yili had stayed here in the Water Edge Kingdom for more than a decade for him, suppressing the chaos in the palace and pushing him up to ascend to the throne. He had also grown and developed the might of the Water Edge Kingdom, paying back by more than 100 times for having saved his life. But Yumu Chen knew deep down inside that the man Qin Yili did not belong to the Water Edge Kingdom, and never had he been. He had made that clear when they first met. He was waiting for someone, and if he failed to locate the person, he would forever remain the Water Edge Kingdom to support its reign. But if he came to find that person, he would follow that person to his death. To him, that person was his entire life. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Maybe, it was mere affinity between the Water Edge Kingdom and that man but not fated to be. The Heaven's End Palace was Qin Yi Li's residence. It was a sprawling palace that was no less luxurious than the emperor's chambers. In that vast place, besides Qin Yi Li, there was only Jin and 2 other servants, highly empty and vacant. But all this time, Qin Yi Li particularly loved living under that quiet tranquility that was almost deadly silence, with no one to disturb him. He had a cold and distant personality and could very well not speak a single word throughout the day, like the winter ice upon mountain peaks that would not melt over thousands of years, even under the scorching rays of the fiery sun, a chill forever exuded from his body. Chapter 113. 1. Dream from the past life. Most of the time, he was immersed in his dreams, as in those dreams, there was the past that he missed. The girl possessed a pair of smiling eyes, like all forms of sadness and worries were unable to stand within them at all. And she always called out sweetly to him, as, Little Yi. Despite the fact that she was stopped from getting close to him who had been of low and humble status, in those nights during the winter when everyone was fast asleep, his door would always been silently pushed open. The young lady's slender nimble figure would come sneaking in, scuttling without a thought right onto his bed. When those cold tiny hands snuck under the warm covers, he would be awoken and she would just look innocently at him with those beautiful eyes, looking so pitiful and feeble. She would then say in a soft and endearing voice, Little Yi, I am cold. He did not want to see her always getting punished because of him, and hence his attitude towards her was always cold and distant. He always told her that a man and a woman should keep their distance to avoid unnecessary gossip. At that time, they were just about 12 or 13 years old, an age that was prone to wild recklessness. He was always a person that was more mature and steady than children his age, while she was a lively and often mischievous girl, just like a carefree little princess. As a direct descendant of the family bloodline and one who was gifted with high intelligence and a strong grasp of things, she was well liked by the elders and senior generation, who doted on her very much, treating just like they would a little princess. But this little princess was different from others. She had a very lively and sunny personality but did not have any close friends. The person she was closest to was that youth that was found in the snow and brought back to the house. To what extent did she like him till? Not only did she give him a name, he even bestowed upon him a surname that was the same as her own. Just how high an honor was that? It was said just how many good deeds had the youth done in his past life to be so fortunate now, to have won the little princess' favor. And only he himself knew, that all this time, she had been the one coming to stick to him. She did not have parents from birth. It was heard that her father was betrayed while out on a mission and fell into an ambush. Her father had fought with his life, clearing a pathway with his blood, to help his fellow clan members flee, but finally died from his injuries that had been too severe. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Her mother had been very near her term for the birth, and when she heard the news, she fell into a dead faint. And because of the trauma she suffered, she went into early labor, and it was probably due to the sorrow knotted up in her heart that she was in labor for an entire day and night, but she still had not given birth to the baby. When the baby was finally born, leaving her utterly drained and completely exhausted, her mother was found to be no longer breathing. She was brought up by her paternal grandfather. It was not known why she grew up exceptionally optimistic despite her pitiful past. She did not cry when she was born, but was laughing, a phenomenon that had never been seen before, a baby that laughed at the moment of her birth. He had asked her why she was always laughing, and wasn't that very tiring? Chapter 113. 2. Dream from the past life. Her expression congealed for an instant and her voice was very light as she said, I'm tired, but what can I do? For everyone else, they have their parents protecting them, but I only have myself to rely on. If I am not strong and do not stand out from all the others, I will not be able to attract their attention. For an orphan girl who has no one else to depend on, in this family clan filled with so much malicious scheming and plotting, there wouldn't be any of my bones left by now. She could be hurt, and she could cry, but no one would pity her if she was like that. So before the man who harbored rapacious designs in his heart appeared, Qing Tianlin, whose heart was filled with an insatiable ambition, people just needed to treat her a little bit nicer to make her let down her guard against them. Moreover, Qing Tianlin appeared as her elder brother, who showered her with endless concern and indulged her, which caused her to not think of guarding against him at all. When she came to see Qing Tianlin's true face in the end, an immense change came over her completely, her personality turning to become entirely different. She was always laughing and smiling before, and she became a person who seemed to wear a mask over her face all the time, making it impossible to read her emotion at any moment in time. Ever since then, she became prickly and cold, emotionless and merciless, her heart seemingly hardened, and it had no place for anyone in there. Her relationship with Qing Yili had slowly grown distant as well, probably because she did not want to believe in anyone anymore, afraid that she'll be hurt. But that did not matter. This time, it would be his turn to stay by her side to protect her, and not allow anyone to harm her. The scene then changed. From a young girl that was about 10 years old, she had transformed into a mature and alluring woman. She turned herself around slowly, and smiled faintly at him. However, a trickle of red blood flowed down from a raised corner of her lips, which stained his vision blood red. Before she fell to the ground, he caught her in a tight embrace, his body shaking uncontrollably. He had never felt so frightened before, as that faint smile from her just now, seemed to be her bidding her final goodbye. "I'm so tired." Her voice was so light that it seemed the slightest breeze would blow it far away, but it struck so clearly onto his heart. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, don't not try to speak anymore. I will get someone to save you. Don't be afraid. You'll be fine. He did not know how he managed to say so many words. It was the first time that he who had always been a man of few words had his indifferent eyes filled with panic. The long fingers kept wiping away the blood that surged out from the side of the woman's mouth, but the more he wiped away, the more blood there was. The bright red blood stained his entire palm, and stained the clothes on him a bright red as well. Damn it! Why can't I stop the bleeding? Why? The man's frantic eyes were red, a heart-rending helplessness upon his face. Stop flowing already, I beg you. What must I do to save you? Little Yi. The woman's ice-cold slender fingers clasped the side of his face, seemingly with slight tender regret. Foolish child, what are you crying for? A man does not shed tears easily. Chapter 113. 3. Dream from the past life. His tears fell upon her neck, hot and scalding. But she had not known that he would lose his calm just because of her, to shed such precious tears. That this man who did not even know how to smile would one day actually cry. Little Yi, I am suddenly regretting bringing you back. The woman said as she looked straight into his eyes. After that statement came out, the expression on his face froze. If I had not brought you back here, you might have been able to live a life without worry. Ever since you came to follow me by my side, you've suffered so much. And after I die, it is not known what those people would do to you. I really cannot help worrying for you. He then growled like a trapped beast. You will not die. You cannot die. Even if you are in hell, I will be with you. No matter where you are, I will find you. He held her tightly in his arms, like his mind was about to break. You said that you will never abandon me. You lied. You're a liar. Promise me that you'll live well. I don't want that. Behind layer upon layer of curtains, a hand with clear distinct joints reached out, a hand long and slender with smooth fair skin. The man slowly sat himself up in bed, his dark green eyes like those of a wild beast still tinged with a slight blur from having just awoken. As the fogginess cleared and faded away, a bottomless bone-piercing chill could then be seen within the eyes. Ever since he met with Chinyu, he had seldom come to be haunted by these nightmares. But today. And it was this same dream. Could it be an ominous sign? His feet bare and wearing just his thin black inner robe, he stepped onto the icy cold floor, his thick luxurious silver hair a stark contrast against his black clothes, a dreamily beautiful sight. His emotionless gaze fell upon the tall tree outside. A lot of its leaves had been blown off its branches by the wind. It was already autumn. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. It would be this season that he would be able to see his girl again, and never will they part again. But the dream that had come so suddenly caused him to feel perplexed and uneasy once again. Was something about to happen that concerned little Yu's safety? The flurry of falling leaves was like an old man with death looming near, his remaining life hanging precariously that was about to come to an end. Fallen leaves returning to its roots, to await a new life in the next year. The green beastly eyes suddenly surged up tempestuously, every inch of the aura around his entire body freezing up into ice. The fallen leaves started to harden up in a blink where the leaves falling down through the air froze before they even reached the ground. The sun's ray shone upon them, scintillating into multicolored light, beautiful and breathtaking. But in the very next instant, all of that broke and shattered, turning into tiny crushed ice crystals, to disappear into nothing. Chapter 113. 4. Dream from the past life, new life. He would not allow that person to have a chance at a new life. Moreover, on the other side. Because of some special reason, whenever he got wounded, it was hard for Lu Junyao to recover from it. Hence, the people beside him took exceptional care of his body. Don't need to mention him getting a tiny wound from a scratch. Even if he was to accidentally knock or bump into something, someone would always be there ready to take the brunt of it for him. One could well imagine just how revered that man's body was to all these people. After they came back from the underground lair, although that tiny and negligible scratch had been carefully treated by Bai Zhiyan, the fever had burned his entire body for one whole night and it was till noon the next day that the fever subsided. Bai Zhiyan had been frantic with worry and did not sleep the entire night, afraid that something might happen to that fella, refusing to leave the room a single step even when a subordinate came in to take over his shift to watch over Lu Junyao throughout the night. Bai Zhiyan's heart was so weighed down with worry about Lu Junyao's condition that he did not even notice the conflicted and concerned gaze the grey-robed man was looking at him with, a conclusion coming to take root in the grey-robed man's heart. That fella Bai Zhiyan has indeed been harboring covetous thoughts towards the Lord, and it seems the feelings were rather deep. After the fever subsided and seeing the man on the bed was looking rather weak, Bai Zhiyan said with his face creased up in impatience. You listen to me good now. Anything that has to do with that lass, you are not allowed to stick your hands into it in future. Do you hear me? She might have saved your life, but how many times have you helped her both openly and in secret? I don't think she knows that you were wrecked so badly with fever here. Do you think she will feel guilty about it at all? The man knitted up his brows slightly in displeasure and then said in a lazy offhand manner. It's just a fever. What are you getting so uptight about? You say it's just a fever. Bai Zhiyan's peach blossom-like eyes were overflowing with emotion, bursting with rage. Do you know you nearly died from the burning fever? If I had not remained here to watch over you the whole time, you think your fever would have subsided? Have you forgotten the time when you accidentally cut your hand and ended up filling up the entire house with blood? And you can tell me that it's just a fever now. Do you know that just a fever can kill you? It could be seen just how angry he was, as his good-looking face was flushed a rageful red. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Lu Junyao then sighed rather helplessly as he looked at the man who had gone on such a long rant in one breath, and he then asked in a highly concerned voice, Are you thirsty? What? Bai Yan was baffled. He was talking about something so serious. What does it have anything to do with being thirsty? Lu Junyao then explained. I was afraid that you might be tired having said so much and thought that you might want to have a drink before you continue. Bai Yan was at a complete loss for words. He wanted to just vomit out blood and die so much. Chapter 114. 1. Scheming beast, this fella is never once serious. He can go so far off track even with such a serious topic. How tiring. It's really a subordinate sorrow to serve a lord like this. Criticizing silently in his heart for a while, Bai Yan suddenly recalled about the news he had received from a few days back and said, I heard from the guys that they saw people from the divine temple hanging around close to the dark regions. They did not do anything but seem to be searching for something. Searching? Lu Junyao raised an eyebrow. That bunch of people have always proclaimed that they are closest to the gods and portray themselves to be holy saints, never wanting to have any dealings with an evil force like us all this time. For them to come into the territories within the dark regions, aren't they afraid that they'll be tainted by the evil air and suffer punishment from God? Bai Yan was amused by those words and went on to say, you don't need to emphasize such a clear line between our relationship with them. Who in cloud heaven does not know that the revered holy temple lord of the bright moon temple who is as beautiful as a celestial goddess has admired the dark lord for many years? Heh heh, a pity the flower petals fall upon an indifferent stream. That was clearly an attempt to make fun of him. Lu Junyao cast a sideways glance over at him and said in a lazy tone, admiration. She probably wants to suck out my essence for her cultivation. That woman is a serpent under that beauty and you don't even know that. Come on, there's no need to be so harsh with your words. It is also advantageous to you, isn't it? She's a dual cultivator. Not only will it enhance the harmony of yin and yang, it will also consolidate and elevate your cultivation, it is really the best of both worlds. Moreover, the other party is so beautiful looking and her heart is absolutely loyal to you, why not? You just grant people their wish. Bai Yan laughed, his expression on his face looking highly dirty as he cajoled and teased. Lu Junyao snorted derisively and said, since you like her so much, I'll send someone to go to the divine temple to make a marriage proposal, so that you do not need to constantly be eaten up by jealousy and indulge in wishful thinking. He is indulging in wishful thinking. He is being eaten up by jealousy. He is just cracking a joke here, you know. To think this fella could be so vicious that the man could even dream up a comeback as insidious as offering him up to them in marriage. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU as expected, even though the man had been wrecked by fever for an entire day and night and his body was still in a weakened state, Bai Yan was still unable to win that fella in a battle of words like before. When the misty fog dispersed, upon the beautiful and stunning countenance of the lady dressed in fiery red, a vague hint of a gentle smile could be seen upon the faint curl at the edges of her lips. The slim and seductive figure was seated upon a swing, rocking back and forth lightly as countless pink flower petals fell from the trees above, onto her hair, her body. The long luscious eyelashes were half lowered, and a multicolor striped butterfly seemed so attracted to the beauty that it landed audaciously on those lashes, reluctant to leave. The ticklish feeling from her lashes caused the lady to let out a light laugh, sounding like the tinkle of silver bells, pleasing and melodious that was carefree and joyous to hear. Chapter 114. 2. Scheming beast. She slowly raised up a hand and her sleeve slid down slightly to reveal a fair and smooth wrist, her beautiful veins against her white skin like lustrous jade under the sunlight, glaringly fair. The butterfly on her lashes fluttered its wings and obediently flew onto her finger, not moving thereafter. That scene was so beautiful it took a person's breath away, unable to help themselves but lament how could such an amazing person in the world. If a youth were to catch even a glimpse of this, it might come to hinder him his entire life. The lightly rocking swing suddenly stopped, and a pair of long arms stretched out to wrap the lady's slender body tightly in an embrace. A muscular figure appeared, sticking so close to the lady that there wasn't any bit of a gap between them. "Ah, look what you did. You scared away my butterfly," the lady said in mild anger, her voice exceptionally gentle and enchanting. Her beautiful frail jade-like hand was held in the person's grip, their fingers interlocked, which was what scared off the butterfly that coveted the aura the lady exuded. "Who asked my fey heir to be just too beautiful for words? You make me can't help myself but want to come close the moment I see you." As the man whispered those sweet words, the warmth of his breath tickled the lady's neck, numbingly ticklish. The man's actions teased the lady till she could not help but squirm her body away. She had just turned her head and was about to admonish him, wanting him to keep away from her a little, but was suddenly kissed out of the blue. The man's burning lips and tongue invaded into her world in an instant, dominating and unyielding. The lady's beautiful face could not help but redden. Although shy, she did not reject him, her two slender arms curling up around the man's neck and her lips parting slightly, allowing the man to overwhelm her forcefully, his very being enveloping her entirely, which wouldn't dissipate for a long while. It was some moments before it stopped, the man holding her by her waist, smiling at her who was panting slightly in his arms, looking highly drained, and he could not help but say teasingly, "It has been such a long time already, so why are you still helpless like this? If I am to do anything further to you, wouldn't you be overexhausted?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Those words that were heavily laden with meaning made the lady highly embarrassed, and tracing a small crescent with her finger, she squeezed out a few words haltingly from her mouth. "You're such a thug." Hearing that, the man let out a soft laugh and he rested his forehead against hers before he said softly, "Call me a thug again and I'll make that accusation come true, and show you what a real thug will do." "You." The lady's eyes grew wide, looking like she was filled with indignant rage. Before she could even finish her sentence, the man leaned in and kissed her, and his low sexy voice then sounded right beside her ear, "Don't look at me like that. Fey heir, you know it very well. I have never been able to resist you all along, I will not be able to hold back." Chapter 114. 3. Scheming beast. She leaned her tiny reddened face upon his shoulder, her pearly shell-like teeth biting her lip as bashfulness filled her heart, but feeling indescribably sweet at the same time. But in the very next second, the tiny face suddenly looked like it exploded, turning a bright red crimson. For no other reason, but because the man's great hand had led her small hand to slowly move to a spot that was not be described, which threw her into such a panic she wanted to scream out and flee. But the man's voice sounded innocent and aggrieved. "You are to blame. Making it so torturous for me every time, causing me so much anguish. Let me go." Her face was so red it seemed like blood would drip out from it, her voice so soft it was like a mosquito. "No, just leave it there like this. Just for a while," the man said thuggishly. "How can you be so Me? What? Despicable. Oh. Despicable." The man's handsome-looking face suddenly showed a naughty smile. "Like this? Eek. Go away." The lady's voice was embarrassed almost to death, which startled the birds in the woods. Chin Yu woke up with a smile. She did not know why she would have such a sweet and happy dream. Those two people in the dream were so blissful that it was enviable. Fei Er, that was her mother's birth name. That woman was most probably her mother when she was younger, and that man was her father. She supposed it should be. Yen Su had said before that her mother was a seemingly gentle woman who kept everyone else at arm's length. To be able to make her show such a joyous smile that came right out from her heart must be because of the man she loved so dearly and deeply, the one and only man she had ever loved. All in all, it was a good dream. She thought that the day would come that she would not just see them through her dreams, but to meet them face to face. The sun had already risen outside, and it could be seen just how long she had been dreaming. She got up out of bed and had just changed her clothes when she suddenly heard a commotion just outside her door. Qin Bei's suppressed voice then sounded. "The two of you had better stop for a while. My elder sis probably slept late last night and still has not awoken. Wait till she sees the two of you fighting again. She would definitely get angry." Meatball did not start the fight. "It's this ugly thing here that is bullying and ostracizing Meatball." The little beast's voice was indignant and aggrieved. "Croak. You are the ugly one. Your whole family's ugly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World." Little Snow was so angry it wanted to strike that little beast. "Bullying a toad because I can't talk. You dare to insult me looks? Even Mistress has praised how beautiful I look. You ugly thing. How dare you scold my mother? I will not let you get away with that." Meatball was enraged. It only has mother as its only kin, so its whole family consists of only itself and mother. You can scold the little beast itself, but the little beast will not tolerate anyone scolding its mother. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.